TNA officials met with Spike TV officials in New York about a potential deal to replace WWE programming when its contract expires in the fall. Jarrett told several people that he was optimistic with the reception he received at the meeting and excited about the potential for a deal. Spike TV spokesman downplayed the meeting, telling The Torch, Spike TV executives are always meeting with various entertainment and sports-related organizations. We met with TNA, but that does not translate into a deal. Sources say that any potential deal is in the preliminary stages of being considered, but is a definite possibility that Spike officials will look further into TNA as a content provider.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Nah, the company's going to go under. They're going to lose their TV deal.
They said we would never get on Spike. That was more JR than Jeff, but I got it.
JR probably did that promo too. The goal of the Jarretts from the outside of TNA was to end up head-to-head on Monday nights with Raw on a national network.
That always works.
Why?
Because everyone lives in the 90s and no one can do their own thing.
Why are people obsessed with this idea? Why?
Let's split the audience.
Because, it was a cosmic fluke that the Monday Night Wars worked.
Yeah.
Because you know what happens 99 times out of 100 when two shows that have similar audiences go head-to-head, Liam?
They both lose viewers.
They both lose viewers. They split the audience. Whereas you got, the very rare lightning-striking instance of two shows that went to head-to-head and forced innovation out of both of them in a way that grew the audience.
If you want to be the competition, just be the competition. You don't need to do it on the same day.
And the thing is, if you don't go head-to-head, that means WWE fans can make a choice. They can just watch you. They don't have to not watch Raw. Because it's much harder to get a WWE fan to watch TNA if they also have to stop watching Raw in order to do it. Whereas, if you're on another day, perhaps, said WWE fan can watch both Raw and TNA. Then you end up with more viewers. Then the TV company gives you more money.
Then you're alive.
Then you become a more viable, real company.
And then you stay on Spike forever because you don't break their rules about bringing people in to book it. And then CC them in emails.
Even when you look, I'm sure people might argue, it's but the most watched episode of TNA was head-to-head.
I'd say that was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, what if you put that episode on Thursday? Maybe they would have done even bigger numbers.
I feel bad for any of the people that were forced to see that show.
Well, the first one wasn't bad. Everyone after was terrible. The Jan 4 show had at least some energy to it, but the entire Monday Night run was awful, and you can hear all about it. TNA.com.
I just winked at the non-existent camera.
They heard it. They heard that eyelash move. Eyelash? Good. I guess eyelid would make more noise than an eyelash.
I don't think any of them made noise, per se.
Unless a single solitary eyelash fell out of your eye in that very moment and right onto the microphone, into one of the gaps in the microphone, right to the core of the microphone, and they heard that.
Then my microphone lights on fire.
Multiple TNA sources say the company is on the verge of announcing a new TV deal in the United States. By on the verge, they mean in the next, 6 months.
Yeah.
The announcement could come within the next week or 2 or 6 months, but they are bound by a confidentiality agreement. Once again, WGN is in discussions, Spike is in discussions, and obviously FSN is also in discussions. There's, WGN is probably actually no, because Jarrett goes to FSN and says, hey guys, we've been doing okay. How would you feel about, instead of us paying you, we could get money from you? And FSN were like, that's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting proposition, Jeff.
But how about you continue to pay us? Because we like the money.
Jeff's like, but we would like money, and if we have money, we can continue to run shows.
But FSN were like, yeah, it's a good argument. But also, what if you continue to give us money? So we both got a show that does ratings and money.
The problem there is that if we keep giving you money, we will eventually run out of money.
Right.
And then we won't have a show, which means you won't have a show.
But have you considered? Your show's ratings aren't actually that good.
Hey, fuck you! And that's how the meeting went.
So it's mostly the money they're after, not the ratings.
Yeah.
I think that is exactly how that meeting went.
Yeah, I think we perfectly reenacted it. And scene.
So they were at an impasse where TNA wanted money to put the show on the air.
But they weren't at an impact.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
FSN were like, no, we like the money you get us. So basically at that stage, it became very clear that no matter what, FSN is done. So come May, come when that deal is up, they're going their separate ways. And then there are two in the conversation. WGN, which were also in the conversation, if you remember back when they went off on FSN in the first place. And Spike TV, who have also just dropped WWE programming.
Garrett, who do you think's going to win?
I think it's going to be another network. I think Nash is going to be like, guys, I've been watching BT. and that's where we're going. That's where we'll be hip and cool.
We're going to HBO.
Yeah, we're going to air after The Sopranos.
That'd be a great spot, to be honest.
Who would be the TNA Tony Soprano?
Dusty, right?
Yeah, it would be Dusty, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I would love Dusty doing, like, therapy skits.
Talking through all his trauma from wrestling.
Yeah.
There is probably, like, a version of the Jarrett character that's good as, like, a...
Well, Jarrett's great when he just gets to kind of goof off. So if he's not the champion and he's doing those segments, I think, like, that'd be probably pretty great.
Yeah, when he has the falling out with Jerry, he just goes to therapy on the show.
Yeah. Do you think with this, like, upcoming change in 6 months, they're like, we need to change what the product that we're presenting is? Do you think, like, they're like, all hands on deck, let's bring in guys, let's revitalize this division, let's, you know, like, do you think there's a call to arms sense?
It's funny you asked that, because this is like the fourth time that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah. It's what they do best, honestly, at the moment.
Where, like, there was a little rallying cry when they got on TV at first that kind of fell off. Then there was the second rallying cry when they got on pay-per-view at first, the 3-hour monthly pay-per-views. And that lasted a little while longer, and I think produced some better shows than the first one did. But I think, once again, it's fallen off. And now it's like, again, it's like we've fallen into our kind of general TNA malaise with some high points. I think more high points than there were in March. And I think the fact that March was a bad month of TV leading to a terrible pay-per-view that didn't do great numbers is ultimately the thing that has people like being like, maybe someone else. And I do think, like, the financial peril the company is in at the moment, like, where it's still in the state where everyone thinks the company might go out of business at any given moment, has a lot of people being like, we have to try something different, we can't, like, we can't afford patience.
Which is ironic considering they never did shut down.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you just told them, it's like, actually guys, it's gonna work out.
Yeah, take your time.
Like, against all odds, pardon the pay-per-view pun, you are going to end up with a pretty good TV deal with Spike TV that's actually going to go real well. And
you're going to be there for a long time until you fuck it up.
Yeah. In many different ways over the course of 8 years.
But, like, I guess we'll get to that whenever we get to it. That irritates me to this day. Like, just don't do it and you're fine.
Yep.
Like, there's a chance you're still on the network in 2023.
There is that alternate reality where they didn't get on the bad side of Spike. They're still on Spike. And, like, Paramount Network isn't what it used to be. But it also has the most popular show on cable right now.
And on streaming with Paramount Plus.
Yeah, like Yellowstone is huge.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest show on cable. And TNA could have coasted off that in the year of our Lord 2023.
James Storm getting a big push.
I know there was always talk that, like, the Dixie thing wasn't actually the death knell.
That sure didn't help.
But I think there was, like, an offer on the table. But it was obviously for less than they were getting before. So Dixie was like, no, we're going to shop it around. And then by the time they came back to Spike and all the Russo stuff had gone down, they were like, nah.
One of the worst calls they ever made.
Because at least, like, even if it's less money from Spike, Spike still gives you the platform and enough money to both rebuild and not go out of business, and not go into, like, the spiral that the company went in from, like, 2015 through the Anthem purchase.
Also, it's Spike. It's a decent fucking network.
Yeah, it's a real cable network that has like a decent audience where at least, 900,000 people minimum will watch your show every week, at least back in 2014. It's still even in 2014, like the Dixie episode where she got powerbombed through a table still did, I think, about 1.4 million viewers.
Yeah, it still had moments where like it did like blow back up to those levels, and it still like would have been in the wrestling zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And plus, like, when that happens, they stick around for a couple more years. That's when New Japan starts to blow up. New Japan at that point hasn't like really like attached itself to ROH. Could have attached itself to TNA.
They could have mended fences a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Especially given if TNA still had the Spike TV audience, that's a very strong selling point.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you get, like, the Bullet Club guys that started going over to America, ROH, you get Okada and Nakamura during, like, when they're trying to get over. All of that's happening on Spike TV, TNA instead.
Yeah, what if the Bullet Club made national TV in 2015 instead of with AEW, basically, in 2019?
Yeah.
The alternate histories.
I tell you, that is my number one superpower that I would want.
Seeing all of the branching paths that could have happened.
Yeah.
Seeing all of the different Finn Balor universes.
Oh, again, the most influential wrestler of the last 20 years.
So there's three pretty big stories going on at the moment. We talked about Candido, we talked about the big power struggle and booking changes, and then there is the undercurrent of all that, which is the television negotiations.
Which we kind of touched on a little bit.
So TNA's contract with Fox Sports Net expires at the end of May, and TNA may choose not to renew it. As reported here 2 weeks ago, this is in the Torch, TNA management has said that they would be making a major announcement regarding its TV future this month, and WGN and Spike were the leading candidates for the new home of TNA. TNA would prefer to end up on Spike, but with FSN insisting on a 6-month contract that would lock TNA in on FSN through the end of November, preventing them from instantly switching to Spike after WWE's contract expires in October. If TNA were to reach a deal with WGN, they would end up running Monday nights, not live. Or I think what it ended up being settled on was actually the model they ran in 2010, which was live one night, taped the night after. First hour would be unopposed, and the second hour would go head-to-head with Raw. WGN has almost no built-in audience relative to Spike. It's mostly, it carries a bunch of like Chicago sports in particular. It's not a particularly strong national station, even if it is available nationally. But it's a big station in Chicago because I think it had the Chicago sports. But if TNA signed with WGN, they could move to Monday nights as soon as June. TNA could also renew with FSN and bypass the jump to WGN entirely. The Spike situation appears to be up to Spike, not TNA, which is said to be intrigued but cautious about acquiring TNA to replace WWE this fall. Spike had stopped negotiations with TNA until its UFC deal was finalized and announced last week.
Spike's about to have a big old boost.
Yeah, because obviously the UFC and Ultimate Fighter, it's a huge boost to Spike. But they're losing WWE, which is a bigger outlet than both.
Oh yeah, they're trading in a surefire thing for some risky properties.
Yeah, but probably risky properties at a much lower cost.
Yeah, and one that will pay off tremendously.
So yeah, the way this dynamic is working, they want Spike. They're not sure can they get Spike, but they want Spike.
Listen, we all want Spike, okay?
They would be fine with staying on FSN until they get Spike. The issue being FSN want a minimum 6-month contract, whereas TNA wanted a month-to-month commitment. Because TNA did not want a situation where if they got Spike, they couldn't seamlessly go on Spike the week the WWE contract expired.
Which would be also great optics for them.
Yeah, because that's the way you'd want to do it, right? Because obviously WWE would have an exclusivity clause, so they couldn't go on Spike before that. But the second the WWE contract expires, that week you want to be on Spike. And the way it turns out, they actually end up putting them in the Velocity slot, so that it's right in the time slot of where WWE viewers would have regularly watched, which is like really smart. But that's like the seamless transition they wanted. So if they signed the 6-month contract with FSN, that would have taken them through November and taken that off the table. So that FSN contract, even though they obviously wanted to stay on TV rather than not, that's untenable. They can't do it. So FSN's gone. That's potentially TV being gone. And then the other player there is WGN, which the intriguing part of it is that if it is WGN, it would have been a Monday Night War. They would have gotten absolutely fucking slaughtered. But
yeah, I don't know why people think that's the solution to all their problems.
Because when you think about like the level of star power and TV exposure they had when they tried in 2010 was like 7 million times bigger than it was here in 2005.
I mean, it forced fucking Vincent Brett to make up.
Yeah, just to compete with it. But they're thinking here, in '05, with no stars and barely any TV exposure, they can just drop themselves on Mondays and go head-to-head with Raw, or head-to-head with at least the first hour of Raw.
Listen, I don't think they can do it. I think they hope that they can get something out of it before they move time slots again.
Apparently, as mentioned in the last episode, that's a big thing that Jarrett's wanted. They wanted that Monday Night War. They thought it was the right idea. And we talked about that last time. It's stupid.
There's a reason. Dixie Carter right, is all I have to say.
So, yeah. Dave writes about this as if it's like close to a done thing. He's like, we're one step away and likely a few weeks away from having a second edition of the Monday Night Wars. And it's actually 5 years away, Dave, as it turned out.
Classic Dave Meltzer L, am I right?
Yeah, but contracts had not been signed, nor a deal verbally closed. But a final decision on TV is almost surely going to be made within a week or two. And it turns out they did not go ahead with this. We'll talk about more in June. Obviously, we know where they end up. They end up on Spike. But...
What?
The big spoiler, they end up on Spike TV. You might have heard of it.
Isn't it crazy that a little reflection here in this 1.5 hour bullshit, that we're almost at the Spike era?
Yeah, we're in May. Spike starts in October. Out
of the asylum, onto the Fox Sport, and now boom, Spike. We're crushing this.
The big bet TNA had... Oh, you just mean us?
Yeah, I'm talking about us. I'm not talking about TNA.
Banging through this history of TNA?
Yeah. We're going to be up to 2023 in no time. Then things are going to get real awkward.
As I mentioned before, the main reason that we went month by month instead of like show by show or something is that like I just wanted to get through those asylum years into like the good years of TNA as quickly as we could.
Yeah, mainly because you were worried I was going to lose interest. Then you'd have the, immeasurable task of replacing me.
I'd never replace you. I'd stop the podcast without you.
Oh my god.
Liam's like, is that a promise?
Okay, I have an out. Much like Jeff Jarrett as champion, I now have negotiation leverage.
Just put the NWA title on you.
If you buy me the NWA title, I'll do this forever.
So TNA's big bet is that while Spike are like, we don't actually want wrestling, TNA are like, wrestling and MMA go really well together and we think they really do want wrestling.
Hey, we just have Tito Ortiz.
So that actually might be the reason they are bringing in Tito. They'll be like, look, Spike, we have some MMA guy.
Well, we always knew that, Jarrett had an interest in interacting with UFC.
He is double J, double MMA.
Well, yes. But, also, we've seen that in previous notes. So it's there was clearly always... He thought there was potential for crossover. UFC even considered it at one point, I believe. But then we're like, no. So there's always been kind of an idea. And we got a little taste of it. And we get a bit more. MMA and TNA have kind of always had hands in each other's pockets.
Well, because we talk about Spike and MMA and TNA, we'll get to it far down the line at this stage, but where TNA becomes essentially like the marketing vehicle for Bellator at first.
Yeah, I remember that's where I first heard of Bellator.
So you may have noticed, Liam, while watching these episodes, that there were only 2 episodes of Impact.
I did notice that.
That is because TNA's 52-week television deal with Fox Sports Net expired with the May 27th edition of Impact.
And that's it, we're done. No more. See ya!
Technically with the May 28th replay PW Torch, actually. Knocking TNA off TV until the Slammiversary pay-per-view. So they had 2 TVs coming out of Hard Justice, which we'll talk about in depth in a minute, but in which they loaded up to build that pay-per-view. They basically did the entire month in 2 TVs, which made one of the TVs really good, and one of them pretty good.
Yeah, they should do it every time.
Just 2 TV pay-per-view cycle. Just load those babies up with all the pay-per-view programs you can get into them.
Yeah, that would rule.
And then fill out the rest of the card with random X Division matches featuring returning talent that people like.
You think you would run out eventually.
There's a lot of good X Division guys.
Yeah, but when you're doing 24 pay-per-views a year.
Well, they do 12, but...
That's what I'm saying, though.
Oh, if you shoved it down to 2?
Yeah.
So you're saying that they should also increase the number of pay-per-views? It's not just 2 weeks TV that they throw out there at some stage?
Yeah, but what are they going to do? Just not have TV?
That's what they did here. They did 2 weeks, took 3 weeks off, and then did a pay-per-view.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to do 2 weeks, pay-per-view, 2 weeks, pay-per-view, 2 weeks, pay-per-view.
Damn right. That should be our cycle these days.
They'd make a lot more money.
Would they?
For a time.
I guess it was in the streaming era, it might make more sense. The deal, which called for 52 weeks of Impact programming beginning with June 4, 2004, has not been renewed by either side. There was, as we talked about, a renewal on the table that Fox Sports Net were willing to do for 6 months, but TNA thought they had too many options in the market to take themselves off the market for 6 months, so they did not want to stay with Fox Sports Net. And also, the deal offered by Fox Sports Net was still a paid deal, where they were paying to get on the air, and TNA were still like, we would rather be paid or at least get an ad split.
They're like, there's a chance that we maybe make
make money, so you're the least likely option at this point.
Yeah, and like if there was an option to be like month to month with Fox, they probably would have stayed just so they're still on TV. But Fox don't really want to be like, yeah, we'll help you out while you look for another TV deal.
Yeah, that's not great.
The non-renewal is not a surprise since TNA has been in the midst of negotiating potential television deals with either WGN or Spike TV as a way to keep TNA programming on the air after the already established May 27th expiration date with FSN. At one point, it was believed that a TNA WGN deal was done, with both parties keeping quiet about it until a strategically timed announcement. The expectations were that TNA would air on WGN on Monday nights beginning June 20th, live for 2 hours starting 1 hour before Raw. The show would be live every other week, with the taped show taking place the day after the live event. However, negotiations may have been derailed at the last moment, in part due to concerns WGN had over TNA's ownership situation, which we'll talk about in a moment.
PW Torch muttered.
Well, there was a lot of like Dave was so confident to like going as far as to say TNA was expected to announce likely before you read this them going on WGN on Monday nights. So it was close. It was really, really close.
I'm very curious, like, well, they obviously wanted the Spike one more. That was like their shoot for the moon one. But they were like pretty content with the WGN deal.
Because yeah, WGN is a bigger network than FSN. I do think it's still paid. I'm not sure. Obviously, because the deal never came to fruition, it never got deep enough to like the exact details of those deals being published. I know apparently one of the sticking points was that TNA at least wanted WGN to cover the costs of production, and WGN were like, no.
That would be a big win for them, considering how much they are currently spending on their production.
The interesting thing is, reading through the Observer, Dave is actually more pro WGN than he is Spike. Because he believes like a primetime slot on WGN, even head-to-head with an hour of Raw, will give the company more attention than replacing Velocity at Saturday night. Because it's clear if TNA does exist, like UFC had a block from 8 to 11 on Saturday night, and it would be clear TNA would slot in at that 11 p.m. hour, which is where Velocity aired. So they'd be 11 p.m. Saturday night, as opposed to a primetime slot on Monday on WGN. What I didn't think he factored in was, like, one... And he does mention it a little bit, but I think he's raw. He doesn't do the math right in his head to be like, Spike is clearly the better option there. But one, airing right after Ultimate Fighter is like a big boon.
Yeah, one of the biggest shows of the year.
And two, even if you can slot right into that Velocity slot, you then have a captive wrestling audience on Saturday nights. It's not a huge number of people, but it's a number of people who are used to going to Spike at 11 p.m. every Saturday, and suddenly Velocity won't be there and Impact will be.
A better show.
Yeah, clearly. And apparently, like, Velocity does a 0.5 for WWE in that slot, and TNA does, like, 0.2s, 0.3s on FSN. So the thought is, like, Spike is a much better network than FSN is with better penetration. I think it has, like, 30 million more homes than FSN does at this stage. So if you drop TNA on that much better network, even in a not particularly great time slot, it should at least be able to match the Velocity numbers. And I think that's probably the argument TNA ultimately ended up making, where it's like, look, we're much cheaper than WWE, and also you can drop us there and we'll at least do Velocity numbers. That's the worst case scenario, that we'll at least do Velocity numbers. And if it goes better from there, it goes better from there. And I think that's ultimately the argument that I'm winning. And I'd imagine part of the reason that they did end up dropping out of negotiations with WGN in favor of Spike is because those Spike deal negotiations probably went at least further along. That they're like, listen, we want the Spike deal more than we want WGN.
And I also think there's a lot of potential behind like replays of the show on Spike as well. It's like, yeah, and then we'll chuck whatever episode of Impact on a random Tuesday or some shit, and it's like, that's also going to be a lot more beneficial as well, because like these big networks, they always have content that they need outside of their peak hours. So if you can get your show on one of their shows that may not be at a great time, you're probably going to get a couple other replays of your show on other not great times, but other times that are going to have audiences that weren't watching that first time.
Which is ultimately what happened at FSN, where they did get a bunch of replays. And I think the biggest favor that was ultimately ended up being done to them is they avoided going head-to-head on Mondays at this stage.
Well, that's so stupid.
It is. It's just the dumbest idea that they can't let go of. And as we talked about, like, they got killed in 2010. As we mentioned in the last episode, they got killed
in a stronger position.
Yeah, in a stronger position with much, much bigger names. They still got absolutely massacred. So can you just imagine with these, like, okay, guys, we got DDP.
The companies aren't even comparable at this point.
No.
So like, and even presentation wise, like I think to a general fan, like looking at these two shows, it's a bit of a, not a steep learning curve or like barrier to entry rather, but I'm sure there is a level of like, these shows don't even look like they're on the same level.
Yeah, it's not like Asylum to WWE level comparisons where it would be like, oh, that's just the tiny minor league company and this is like the major league wrestling company. But even the Impact Zone, it's just like, that's a soundstage versus a 10,000 seat arena. They're just not the same. They're just not the same. And ultimately, that was probably a problem going to head in 2010 as well, where it's just like they're just not the same. And we talked about this, I think, on the Patreon show we did, the Monday Night War Patreon show, where we're like, TNA might have more star power than WWE did in 2010.
Yeah.
When you look at both the young star power and then the likes of Hogan, Flair, Hardy, Angle, Sting, like those are RVD, those are huge names. That's like really good levels of star power. And obviously here they have Nash. They could have had
Nash and Raven.
They already ousted DDP last month, so they don't even have him anymore.
And Nash isn't even on TV.
Oh, because he's off shooting movies. So they did announce the future of the TNA programming on Slammiversary, so you might be asking, well, they don't have a TV deal right now. It's a good thought to have if you're thinking that at the moment. That at the moment, while the negotiations have fallen through with WGN, and they don't really want to be on FSN anymore, even though FSN is still open, like that's an option on the table. If all else falls through, FSN, they could go back there.
TNA and FSN have a deal that if they are both 40 years old and neither of them are married, they'll get together again.
Yeah, so like FSN, it's not like a burned bridge, but it is very much TNA don't want to be on FSN anymore. And also, I think if it really came down to it, it's like go back on FSN or close the company. I think they'd be like, we tried our best to get this TV deal. We paid for it for a year to try and like prove our concept and build some ratings that we can shop around, and it didn't work. So let's just close up shop. I think that probably would have been the calculus at that stage if they didn't get a Spike deal.
Yeah.
I really don't think Panda would have been like, we'll keep paying for FSN. It'll happen eventually, sure.
Well, we already know that sort of that is the internal struggle right now where like Panda is getting sick of dumping all this money into this company and they want to start seeing some return on investment.
And we'll talk about that more in the next story. But before that, during Slammiversary, Mike Tenay announced that TNA's Impact programming will be found exclusively on TNAWrestling.com each Friday until TNA finds its way back onto television. A special taping was held after Slammiversary on the 21st to tape a month's worth of TV heading into No Surrender. So they will be back on weekly TV. This is partially to fulfill international commitments. It's because they still have TV internationally and they still need to deliver new episodes for that. They'll air a little on syndication on I think Sun Sports is the network they'll still air Impact on in a little bit. But the primary destination for Impact in the year 2005 was going to the website where they taught you how to download BitTorrent, where you can download the episode of Impact.
This is the 2005 Honor Club.
I was looking at an archived version of the website where it has that little descriptor, that little, you go here, you click this link, and then you download, I can't remember, was it uTorrent or BitTorrent? It was one or the other. And then you can download the episode of Impact and watch it. And like the download link is actually still active. You can like find the download link, but there's no like seeders or anything, so you can't actually download the episode. I was so disappointed. I was like so excited when that link still worked. I expected it to just go to like a dead link, but the link still worked. And then I was like, oh, there's no one to seed my download.
Alright guys, let's everyone get on the Wayback Machine and we'll start seeding old episodes of Impact.
If you downloaded this episode in 2005 and still have it somehow sitting in your BitTorrent, please open your BitTorrent so I can download it from you.
That is an official recognition of a way to download old Impact.
Yeah, it's legal. That's the way. That would be a perfectly legal way to download Impact. No one can kick it out to me. I like that saying as if I'm not the person who would be giving out to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, TNA will air online for the summer as they try to work out their TV deal. This is the month where it becomes increasingly clear that Spike TV is the destination.
Spike TV?
Yeah, I should have said that backwards so that you understood me. It's very funny. So at the start of No Surrender, there did this big artsy video package that had a bunch of hidden messages in it. One of which was TNA is coming to Spike TV, which is technically the official announcement that TNA is coming to Spike TV.
To be fair, I don't hate doing something like that, especially if you're going to announce it like soon after. Like it's a fun little thing that like will get some underground buzz.
Yeah, and by all accounts, I think it worked. I think, like, forums in particular were popping off about the whole, like, Rhino is here, more are coming kind of thing, which is one of the messages. They were also, obviously, like, once they say TNA is coming to Spike TV, people work that out. I wondered if they think people wouldn't work it out. I'd imagine they had to think they would, because it's quite obvious that they're running it backwards. It's not like there's a real bad code to crack.
No. Vince fears Jeff Jarrett.
Vince fears Jeff Jarrett is so funny. Because it's like, it's such a petty little one. It's not even like the folks up north fear TNA or TNA's taking over and they're scared.
I think he's talking about Vince Russo. I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe he is. But like, Vince fears Jeff Jarrett.
And also not TNA.
Yeah, it's just Jeff.
Jeff Jarrett specifically.
Bree Woo scare Vince.
Scares Jeff.
I did appreciate the little bit of foreshadowing as well when it said someone will get gored tonight. Raven was on the screen.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
So yeah, and Raven was the one who got gored.
Wow.
So they were dropping hints. But yes, the big story is that TNA is in fact coming to Spike TV. It hasn't been officially announced, but it's all but announced at this stage. Well, technically it has been officially announced, I guess, given it was in the pay-per-view opening video. But at the moment, TNA is currently still airing on the internet. And as all wrestling broadcasts on the internet, Liam, it went fine. No technical problems at all.
No, I remember watching Ring of Honor on the iPay-per-view and it always worked.
Oh god, I do remember watching Ring of Honor on iPay-per-view.
It was the most, like, upsetting time. Everyone was just angry all the time.
Because I don't think Go Fight Live ever aired literally anything else.
They said this is going to be the thing that we stock our live content with, and we're going to fuck it up every time.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was whatever the final battle that had like a 60-minute Tyler Black Austin Aries match. And there was like a bunch of technical issues and it was like 4 a.m. and those dudes went a fucking hour. And I was like, no, stop, no.
And also their problems went for like 4 years. Like they just never got it.
And I think a lot of companies never got it because Gabe's catchphrase became, how's the stream?
I think like we've mostly got it down now. Ironically, the only place that doesn't seem to get it is New Japan in the US.
Their last show went fine.
I believe the TV Asahi people did that as one. That's why.
So if you think wrestling companies have been disastrous at doing this in times of greater technological advancement, TNA uploading a file to the website apparently caused great deals of problems in June 2005. TNA experienced many server problems during the first week of TNA Impact broadcast being shown exclusively on their website. After a several-hour delay on Friday, June 24th, the new Impact broadcast was released on TNA's website, but not easily accessible. TNA created a downloadable file for fans to view the broadcast at their own leisure instead of streaming the broadcast online, which would have resulted in buffering problems from the sheer volume of visitors. But TNA ran into problems because the file was too large to download in a reasonable period of time without interruptions. As I was mentioning on the last episode, like they put up a full like, here's how to download uTorrent, here's how to download the file, blah de blah, but apparently people didn't have fast enough internet speeds in the year 2005 to download that file particularly quickly, especially when a bunch of people were trying to download it at once, causing strain on the servers.
Come on guys, seed it, remember.
Yeah, if you still have that sitting in your uTorrent from 18 years ago, please seed it, because you can actually still find the download link for this episode, which is very funny. It's wild to think, like, 2005 download times, not great, but probably not the worst. But it's wild to think, one, we were talking about the TNA On Demand, which I haven't heard a word about. I assume they've gotten rid of it at this stage. But like an actual streaming service in 2003, which is crazy. And now it's like, here's the episode on the internet, download it. It's like, TNA, on the cusp of technology. Fair enough, not due to reasons of their choice this time, because they're currently between TV deals, but it's fun to see TNA trying to innovate in the field when they're forced to.
Well, they always say like innovation just comes from struggle, so it makes sense, I guess.
What I'm saying is TNA invented the internet.
That's what I believe.
In a statement released on TNAWrestling.com, Bill Banks said, the TNA staff will be reassessing the situation and consider new options in order to ensure these difficulties won't repeat next week. Our goal is to make Impact easy and accessible for all to watch. We want to thank everybody for their patience. TNA is without television because they're currently waiting for the Spike TV deal to start in October, which they haven't announced. Again, it's not official.
For the record, Bill Banks didn't say that last sentence.
No, that's the end of it. It would be funny if that's how they announced it. It's like, guys, we'll be on Spike in October, it's fine. You won't have to worry about downloading those episodes.
He specifically says tentative deal.
You won't have to worry about your XWT ratio. It's fine.
God. I would never use such a disgusting service to steal wrestling. I don't think I've been on XWT in like 6 years.
How do you get wrestling?
They pay for it.
All the time? No, well, I pay for it.
Well, no, yeah, mostly other people pay for it, and then I get their logins.
So TNA has continued to produce TV, partially, of course, to fulfill international commitments, and then they're finding a way there domestically, because they still want to sell some pay-per-views. They still exist.
Yeah, why not?
Again, the TNA deal is imminent. To follow up on the update, to address the problems associated with downloading a TNA Impact off the company's website, TNA reached an agreement with Real.com to stream Impact online. TNAWrestling.com was unable to handle bandwidth requests related to the download.
Going to Real.com right now.
That's a dangerous proposition, but go for it. Of the June 24th episode found exclusively on their website, causing many headaches for the web division, while also leading to complaints from TNA fans. During that week that followed, TNA reached an agreement with Real.com to deliver future episodes of Impact through Real Player video software for easier streaming of Impact. The July 1 episode apparently went well. The video was not of the same quality as the downloaded file, but people could access it quicker.
Should I download Real Player 22 right now?
Have you ever used Real Player?
No.
I don't think anybody has.
I'm a VLC boy.
Yeah, or whatever the built-in tools are.
No, I'm a VLC boy.
For the longest time, I was like, I'm still using Windows Media Player.
You would. It's the most Garrett thing I've ever heard in my life, actually.
Well, it's better than all the new Windows shite. All the new Windows ones are terrible, and Windows Media Player was fine. I wouldn't say good, but I'd say fine.
I did enjoy that Windows Media Player when I played music would have the little strobing effects.
Oh yeah, and the little
matched
bars
up to the songs.
Yeah.
I missed that. I do miss that.
Spotify should have that.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, why doesn't Spotify have like a option that lets you swap from the album art to the little bars going boom, 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 boom.
And a bunch of the things where it's like Spotify has video from it. It's like a 3-second clip on a loop. It's like, I would rather watch the bars, thank you very much.
Give me the bars!
And I don't want lyrics. I don't want to know what the words are. I want to work them out for myself.
It's alright. I don't mind the lyric. I need the lyrics, but give me the option for the bars.
No.
Oh.
TNA is close to signing a deal with Spike TV to air TNA programming on Saturday nights beginning in the fall season, according to Trade Journal Multi-Channel
TNA
News.
Collision.
Yeah, that's what they were going to abandon the Impact name, because what's a synonym for Impact?
I was going to say, what is an impact if not a collision?
As every show follows the one-word action phrase naming convention of every wrestling television show.
I've been thinking about that. When are we going to evolve?
No, Evolve already happened.
Evolve 42. What was on Evolve 42? Let's have a look.
So what? Okay, if you're so mad that everyone's like oomph and slammo for their TNA, for the wrestling TV show,
AEW oomph,
AEW kapow, what would you call your wrestling TV show then, Liam?
I would call it.
You've Got to Be Wrestling Me presents.
It would be You've Got to Be Wrestling Me live on ESPN2.
It's a catchy name.
Yeah. All right, let me read the Evolve 42 results to you.
Fine.
Santana, I assume Garrett. No! Okay. What? No, okay, they got this wrong, not me. It is Santana Garrett, I assume. And unless Santana of Proud and Powerful fame was wrestling for the Shine Championship.
That would be rad.
Santana versus Andrea. Ethan Page versus Martin Stone. Ray Horace versus Andrew Everett.
Should be
Timothy
good,
Thatcher versus TJ Perkins. Biff Busick versus Roderick Strong.
Oh, he's in the news.
Biff Busick? Nah. Davey Richards versus Trevor Lee. He's in the news.
Trevor Lee?
Ronan versus the Premier Athlete brand in a street fight for the Open the United Gate Championships.
That's one of the best Evolve cards ever.
That's what I would say. Live from Barnett Park and Gym in Orlando, Florida.
Sit there. Is that the one with the plants?
I don't know. It wasn't La Boom, and that's the good one.
Nah, but the one that was just the garden center that had some plants there is the best Evolve /FIP venue.
Yeah. Well, that's where Uncle John's friends. Which took over wrestling Twitter for like 3 days.
So with WWE moving its programming off of Spike TV, TNA may benefit from a built-in pro wrestling audience on Spike, though, as it would essentially be replacing Velocity. Details of the deal are unknown, nor is it conclusively done, as neither party has confirmed the published report from Multi-Channel News, who I guess are technically the first people to put their flag in the ground, being like, this is happening. So we were talking on the last episode about how the WGN deal just seemed to randomly fall through all of a sudden. I would imagine it's because this Spike deal started gaining actual traction, which is the reason
they're like, oh my god, they're actually going to do it.
Yeah, so the WGN deal, which would have been the launch of the 2005 Monday Night Wars, sadly was not to be, and probably not all that sadly.
I wish one day, huh? Bring it back again.
Would you like to see an actual like AEW versus WWE head-to-head war?
Well, it wouldn't make any sense now because SmackDown's the main show, so we just have to go live with Rampage an hour earlier.
I don't think Rampage would win.
It won that one time, thanks to Bunny.
It's funny, you know the way Rampage is preempted in random time slots for the last like 3 weeks?
Been a bit over the place, yeah.
Every time somebody is watching Rampage, it has taken me by surprise. I'm like, what? Why is Rampage on?
I haven't watched Rampage in a long while.
I don't think I've watched more than 2 episodes of Rampage this year, so I feel like after all the moaning, everyone had like the exact same breaking point with Rampage for some reason. It's just like, now is the time where just everyone has stopped watching it.
Like, he'll do this thing where for like a month and a half, it'll become some A-Stars show where randomly they'll be on it every week. Like, at the start it was Punks, and then Moxley did it, and then like Darby did it or something, and then it's like, now we're back at that stage where it isn't someone's show anymore.
Whose show would you make it?
Well, we don't. It's no point in arguing that now. We have another A show to worry about instead.
That's gonna be Miro's show. Miro's gonna get Rampage.
Miro will probably get the Saturday show. So all the Island of Misfit Toys, all the people who are whiny and complain, you can go to the Saturday show.
I'm sure they'll all get along.
Andrade and CM Punk and Miro.
In an online chat this week, Jeff Jarrett stopped just short of confirming TNA is on the brink of announcing a major TV deal. He said, TNA in 5 years will be very interesting. We just had our 3-year anniversary. We've had our critics all along the way.
They said everyone lost a day, they said everyone lost a month, they said everyone lost a year.
Yeah, but do the bit. We're on the brink of making some major announcements that will send us to the next level. I hope that we will have a stronger domestic and global presence in 5 years, and by that time we will have had enough to establish us very strongly in the wrestling space. A lot can happen in 5 years, he later added. TNA is about to make some major announcements that will take us to the next level.
It's not wrong.
He's not wrong, to be fair. Regarding Ring of Honor, he said, Ring of Honor is a promotion, in my opinion. Yep.
Done. That's it. That's all he said.
It's like Ring of Honor is a wrestling company that happens to exist.
That people always say is better than us, and it makes us very upset.
That goes for a very niche audience and does it very, very well. A couple guys on the TNA roster enjoy working there, and they have their style of wrestling that caters to their audience. And I don't think it's for everyone.
Okay, like, fuck you. Fuck you, Jeff. Like, I don't think good wrestling's for everyone. I say promoting my wrestling show.
Yeah, but you want to do your holds and your backdrop suplexes and your anaconda vices, and Jeff is 100%. Like, what if you did guitar shots and run-ins and strokes?
Way more interesting.
Yeah, you don't want to do holds when you... Which would the casual fan rather see, Liam? Someone work a hammerlock or someone getting hit with a guitar?
You know, you bring a valid point. I know what I would rather see.
So, Jeff Jarrett is right. Ring of Honor in the mud.
Yep, I've changed my mind.
He is very diplomatic, and he's like, and you know what? They should be commended for marketing that way to the niche nerds while we market to nobody?
Yeah. There. You know, it's nice of them to have a market. I wonder what that's like.
Regarding the Matt, Lita, Ed situation, Jarrett said, I would like to know if they have a threesome sex tape coming out.
They don't.
It's also a bit weird, Jeff.
He's like, hey, I'm a heel.
He does enough of that on TV this month. TNA is expected to finally have clearance this week, the week after No Surrender, from Spike TV to officially announce a TV deal for the fall. There was some talk in TNA that they'd be able to make the announcement during the pay-per-view, which I guess they technically did.
In a roundabout way. What if that, like, killed the deal?
I would have to imagine they did that with Spike's permission, right?
It would just be very funny if they're like, yeah, you can announce it the week after, and they're like, let's just do it on the show.
Yeah, we'd like to slip in a weird little backwards Easter egg, but Spike will never know. Spike are never going to translate it, right?
Spike will never watch it.
That'll never get out.
Do you think anyone from Spike watched No Surrender?
I'd say so. I would say yes, somebody from Spike.
Some poor intern. They're like, you have to watch the wrestling show to make sure it doesn't kill anything.
Yeah, it's like, we want to make sure this is appropriate for us, so if you could please just sit there and watch all of No Surrender.
And you know, the intern's sitting there drinking 10 beers and like, yeah, bars and moves and wrestling. He's like, yeah, it's rules, but on Spike.
And that's how they got the TV deal.
Yeah, perfect. He's like, yo, this shit's backwards. What could it mean?
This is like Fiend lore.
Spike TV intern lore.
Like you were like, it's a fun idea. It's like it is basically the exact same thing that feeds into Fiend lore, which is the reason wrestling fans probably absolutely loved it. They should have put it in a backwards QR code, and then it would have been like blowing the internet's mind.
No one would have worked out what that was.
I still don't feel like we need QR codes even today, and yet they still exist.
QR codes have taken over as a staple of media. I don't understand it.
Like, they're useless. Just say a link.
Like, having a website on there is easier than putting a QR code, and then I have to, like, pause whatever I'm watching, get my phone, put it up.
Whereas if you just said, go to tnachat.com, you could just be like, oh, it's tnachat.com. I don't have to pause this podcast to scan a QR code. I can just go to tnachat.com.
We should get a QR code.
For our audio medium?
Yeah, and we'll put it on our posters.
No, we'll just describe where the dots are. And
all right, black dot, white dot, white dot, black dot, black dot, white dot,
large,
black dot,
large,
black dot,
large
white
one,
dot.
small one.
No, I'm doing one by one, so they can put it in.
Swirly pattern.
Whoa, how are we getting that?
We're going wild with our QR code.
One day they'll need to. Red dot.
So Dave, I only included this to kind of dunk on him for being wrong. Spike is putting the show on largely because they're being paid for the time, and those with more knowledge of the deal say it's going to be very difficult to make it work in building a profitable business model. It is a far worse deal than ECW, as ECW was not buying the time, but did have to pay TV production costs. TNA has to do both and has a worse time slot, which WWE hasn't been able to get ratings in since the early days of Confidential. It is believed the announcement would be made sometime after No Surrender, but there is some contractual hold-up reason. We're not aware of exactly why Spike doesn't allow the release of the information until it comes out. But he's like very down on the idea that this is a good TV deal, which like he's not entirely unfounded on, because they just came off a similar deal on FSN that actually TNA outperformed the ratings expectations, particularly for an afternoon time slot, and FSN never gave him anything. So I think Dave comes in with a similar cynicism here. It's like they're probably not even going to do WWE numbers, and then their Spike don't want to like turn that into a deal where they give money to TNA. And you're wrong, Dave.
Like, the interesting thing about Spike is, like, Spike was never like, we don't want this thing anymore. Like, it was, like, the ratings were never the problem with TNA on Spike, which is interesting. Like, they're always kind of, like, happy with what it was doing. TNA just TNA'd it up at the end. So I was like, but, I don't know, Dave's very doom and gloom, like, a lot. Even now, when it comes to TV deals.
We finally hit the stage that every podcast hits, where it's actually just becoming about saying, shut the fuck up, Dave, you were wrong.
Yeah, Dave.
We're in our something to wrestle with and 83 weeks phase of just being like, reading a thing Dave said. It's like, no.
I don't remember that.
Didn't happen. And you believe Dave Meltzer?
LOL Dave. At, what did Dave say? Whatever the fuck that stupid Twitter account is.
Oh, the terrible Dave accountability Twitter that's actually just like, he just said a normal thing and you're getting mad at him.
Also, half of it's just, I'm going to plagiarize the content that they put up behind a paywall and post it.
It's distressing just how many people have made their personality entirely just getting mad at Dave Meltzer.
And also, it's just Dave. Like, it's just him. Just let him, who cares?
But no, we should be wrestling accountability. It's not at all that he says bad things about the company I like. That's not why I get mad at him at all. That's always why they get
but he did go 4 3/4 on Julia Tam, so fuck him.
Starting with, after months of rumors and unconfirmed indications that TNA would be airing on Spike TV this fall as soon as WWE moves programming to USA, it became official. Beginning in October, a 1-hour TNA program will be launched as part of Slammin' Saturday Nights, their weekly block of programming that will include the UFC and was touted to include Howard Stern, but did not end up including Stern, and in the end, he ended up going elsewhere.
Damn.
TNA's going to Spike. I know it's a big surprise. It wasn't at all.
Sorry, I thought you were wanting my opinions on the Howard Stern program not coming with it.
Sure, but how would you have felt? Again, this is the weird. I think it's like the 4th different time Howard Stern has like crossed over with TNA in some regard so far.
Yeah. Was Howard Stern still like giant in 2005?
Pretty much. I think he was maybe at, like, he's approaching peak of his powers at this stage, I would have said.
Interesting.
I was never a Stern guy. I was never a Stern listener. I know JB is like the big Stern guy in TNA, and that's how. I remember when they wanted to book Beetlejuice versus. Is his name Beetlejuice?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Against Puppet. They wanted to do that match, but that never came through. And they potentially would have been in the same block of programming here, except that didn't come through either. He's launching his own VOD service, I think, in the end.
God, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, in 2005, launching his own Howard Stern VODs.
The Howard Stern Network.
So instead, it's just a block of UFC and TNA, including Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, that'll work out for them. So sure.
I know, like, it's not something we'll get super into, but I know it was like a thing happening in the background in that there was like a basic war going on between Spike and WWE in the last months. As like WWE announced they're going back to USA, and then for like the last like 2 or 3 months, and particularly the last few weeks, like there was a bunch of passive aggressive bullshit between Spike and WWE, or like that relationship did not end on good terms.
No, historically, that's one of like that's like really the only time that's happened to them too. Yeah. Normally they're pretty like they've stuck to USA for most of Raw, so they haven't had to worry about that. And the SmackDown jumps have been like from, one network to Fox or something. So again, they've done it in like a way that was applicable to everyone's circumstances.
Yeah, and usually, like, networks are very conservative, risk-averse things. They don't want to push the boat out. They don't want to declare war on one of their properties. But I was listening to Deadlock, who were covering the TNA Spike first episode. Not that any other podcast should be allowed to cover TNA. That's ours.
It's fucked up. Brian Alvarez.
Yeah, fuck you, Brian. Thinking
fuck you guys.
We are the first people to have a beef with Brian Alvarez on the internet this month.
Yeah. You know what? CM Punk was right. I'll say it.
But they were talking about how Spike would run commercials during Raw for the UFC, being like, enough of that fake bullshit. You can watch the real stuff in the UFC.
That rules.
And like the last Raw, there was the whole thing where Vince was trying to get in plugs for USA, and they'd put up like bars and tone and cut off any mention of USA. Spike would be editing him and censoring him in the middle of the broadcast on a live show. All of that bullshit between Spike and WWE. I bring it up because I do wonder if part of that is what pushed Spike toward TNA.
I'm sure that's maybe not the whole thing, but there's probably a bit of it that like we also have a wrestling show as well. Fuck you.
Yeah, there's a little bit of spite, a little bit of pettiness. It's like, fine, we'll take on and we'll put them in the fucking Velocity time slot. Right there, the week after you're gone, TNA will be there. Fuck you. We're helping your competition.
Wrestling is an industry that runs on pettiness, and I'm glad that it's now back at the forefront.
Yeah, we are fueled by pettiness in wrestling right now. It is the driving force of everything. It's
perfect. It's how it's meant to be.
We have a Dixie Carter quote, Liam.
It's very short. Don't know why. We are thrilled to be coming to Spark TV,
said TNA President Dixie Carter. This is a real test of your voice after your
yeah, I know. That's why I was like, this didn't come out the way I expected it to. We look forward to bringing our exciting style of total non-stop action and entertainment to male viewers.
Not the women, by the way. She doesn't give a fuck about bringing it to the female viewers.
TNA is for the boys. It's for the fellas.
Once TNA's agreement with Spike TV Dare Impact beginning in October was finalized, Dixie Carter announced the television deal to TNA employees during a conference call on the morning of July 21st. The announcement came 2 days after the Impact taping in Orlando, where no announcement was made to staff and wrestlers at Sunday's pay-per-view, which would have been the last show, whatever the hell one that was. No Surrender. Dixie Carter attended, but she was unable to give any announcement because the deal was not done. So she had to do that weird thing. It's like, listen, it's coming soon, guys, but it's not done, so I can't say anything. And then 2 days later, it's like, no, it's done. We can say it now. The first edition of TNA Impact on Spike TV will air on Saturday, October 1st. TNA will tape matches and promos for October 1st and October 8th on Tuesday, September 27th, setting that taping cadence going forward of taping 2 Impacts at a time. As was the case when TNA aired programming on Fox Sports Net from June to June in the last year, TNA will tape television every other Tuesday, although still under consideration and not definite. TNA will be exploring the possibility of going live on Saturday nights, depending on how well TNA does on Spike TV during the initial debut, and whether TNA TNA can secure talent that normally take indie dates on Saturday nights. TNA President Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett, and graphics producer David Sahadi met with Spike TV officials. The discussion at Spike headquarters in New York centered around production, marketing, and the overall feel of the TNA product when it debuts on Spike in October. Kevin Sullivan, not that Kevin Sullivan, who worked with David Sahadi in WWE, was hired by TNA to assist Sahadi in the graphics department. That Kevin Sullivan is actually still, he's head of post-production for AEW now as well. The latest indications regarding the TNA Spike deal is that Spike is going to be in charge of selling the ad time in the show. That makes more sense than TNA having to sell that ad time, since TNA staff doesn't have those kind of advertising connections, the same ones that Spike would have. And also Spike will be selling TNA as part of a block, the Slam and Saturday Night block, along with UFC, which means they aren't buying into wrestling per se, but a block of like edgy male orientated programming.
Damn, Spike might be good at this stuff.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, it's like it mitigates the risk of bringing TNA into the fold, that you are selling it as part of a package with UFC. Therefore, like, you are taking the risk off that, you know, even if TNA flops, people will still buy those hours for UFC.
Like, there's a level of knowing what they're doing here with Spike that we just haven't seen in all of TNA's history up until this point. Like, this is a company that actually knows how to run what it does.
Yeah, they're like, this is a male-orientated channel. We are going to put the wrestling audience after the UFC audience because there's undeniably crossover, and we think TNA can be a lead-in. And even, like, again, putting it right in the Velocity slot. Like, literally the week after Velocity goes off the air, Impact's there instead. So anybody with the muscle memory of watching Velocity will tune in and they'll see Impact. So you'll get some of those WWE viewers who, like, you know, the kind of people who aren't reading the news and don't see that, oh, Velocity's moving somewhere else, and they might not see it because Spike tried not to let them say it on their television show. So they might tune in on that October 1st show to see Velocity and say, hey, wait, this is a new wrestling show I've never seen before. Look at that, like, six-sided ring.
Whoa, I want to see my Shane Helms versus Local Enhancement guy match. What the fuck?
Who's this? Oh, I remember AJ Styles once wrestled Shane Helms on one of these shows. Therefore, I'm going to watch this.
I'm
TNA.
a giant Velocity head, so I guy who's only seen Velocity. This TNA Impact show reminds me a lot of Velocity.
Yeah, he only knows AJ is the dude. I think that match was on Velocity too, wasn't it? Maybe it was Metal.
I think AJ's WWE stuff was Velocity.
Because he did wrestle Helms on one of them.
He wrestled him on Metal and Jacked.
Oh, both of them. Whoa.
But not Velocity. Wait, okay, these are both credited as being January 26, 2002.
So is it Metal or Jacked? It's a very important question.
Alright, well, Monsoon Classic has it listed as Metal, but WWE has it listed as Jacked.
I trust Monsoon Classic with this more than I trust WWE.
I honestly 100% do. Okay, Monsoon Classic has the entrance, which will have the lower third. Well, listen, this is certainly Metal. This is WWF Metal, so...
Learn your own product, WWE.
So I don't know what to tell you.
WWE is dumb and wrong as usual.
Seeing, like, AJ wrestle this version of Hurricane is so weird.
It's a good match. Hurricane gives him more than he ever deserves.
But, like, Hurricane is, like, full, like, Attitude Era look Hurricane still. So weird. Anyway, Spike TV.
With TNA programming moving to Spike TV, management is telling wrestlers that they will be able to make in the range of $25,000 to $50,000 per year. There are exceptions where some top names will make more. TNA's base salary would represent 1/2 to 1/3 of the potential money a wrestler could earn during any given year. TNA management has told wrestlers that they will be able to command higher booking fees from independent promoters because of the national television exposure. So don't expect huge pay rises or salaries. What a load of fucking bullshit.
You know what I appreciate? 2005 was still an era where they would lie about it to try and make you feel better.
Yeah.
2023, they're just like, fuck you. What are you going to do about it? Go somewhere else?
They're like, listen, guys, you can charge more for your indie dates because you're national TV stars now. And oh, you're national TV stars and we should pay you? No, come on. Don't be crazy.
No, that's insane. You're being insane. We're just gaslighting the wrestlers.
And like, listen, they do end up making, because Spike goes well, so they end up making money. But here they're like, oh, what if it doesn't? So we're not going to give you money for a while. Apparently, like, Spike taking over selling of the ad time must have been a fairly late development, according to Dave, because TNA were talking with Howard Brody, former NWA president and co-author of Dusty Rhodes' autobiography, which was promoted on this show. Not our show, TNA, but also I guess we technically promoted it on our show because we mentioned it was promoted on TNA.
I'm doing it right now.
Apparently, they were talking to him about bringing him on board to sell the ads, but then Spike took over that. TNA gets 2 minutes of ad time to promote its pay-per-views and other merchandise. TNA pays all the production costs, which I do think actually changes by the time they get to the actual TV show, and then Spike gets all the ad revenue. But I do think that changes. I think Spike starts covering production.
Spike were like, holy shit, people bought the block.
Yeah, it's like, this thing makes money. It is like, we'll get to it in October. It is like insane how quickly TNA is a success on Spike. Like, it hit the ground running, it does really well and grows and grows and grows until it doesn't anymore. But
until they do something.
It was one of those things where it was like a real home run win, like right out of the gate. It's like, oh, this is working.
The Spike TV run is like the best thing that ever happened to this company.
Well, yes.
Like, significantly. Like,
Yeah.
we're entering, like, this is the best thing that they ever managed to do.
If you were to say, like, what is the single thing that was most important to the success of TNA for all of its potential not successes, but like the single most important thing was getting on Spike TV. It's the single most important thing to ever happen to the company.
And staying there for, like, a significant portion of time.
Yeah.
Probably still would be there if someone didn't fucking Russo it up.
There were Spike representatives at the pay-per-view, which is one of the reasons it was announced so strongly. This is at Sacrifice, by the way, because they announced it on the pre-show. That's the first time they mentioned it on air. I think they did put out the press release before that, but the first time they mentioned it on air, Mike Tenay in the ring with Larry Z being like, we're coming to Spike TV!
There was a dude in the crowd with, like, a Spike TV shirt, so...
Yeah, they all knew. And also, it played backwards on No Surrender. But apparently the officials there loved the show and started asking if they could get rematches on TV.
Okay.
They want their Jerry Lynn Shawn Walton match on TV.
Yeah, they're like, that ruled. Can we run it back, please? Hey, guys, we really loved Abyss and Lance Hoyt. Could you just run that back?
I think they do run back Abyss and Lance Hoyt, so maybe that was the match.
Shoutouts to the Spike execs. They know what's up.
Samoa Joe received rave reviews from colleagues and members of management after his pay-per-view match against Chris Sabin. He lived up to his reputation and showed a lot of people what the hype about him was all about.
Yep.
So they finally get it.
I'm glad that, like, it took that for them to get it. But yeah, it's Samoa Joe. He's the greatest. That match rules. That Chris Sabin match fucking owns.
Yeah, Chris Sabin rules. Samoa Joe rules. Samoa Joe's the best wrestler in the world at this stage.
Yeah. I wonder what the Spike TV execs thought of Samoa Joe.
I don't know, because they would have seen him wrestling AJ Styles. So I think they probably would have had a pretty good impression of him coming out of Sacrifice.
If I'm Spike TV, I'm like, this is a marketable guy.
It will be a talking point when we get to it. Joe's not prominently featured in like the first month.
I will murder someone.
Which brings us to the month that was September 2005, a very famous month in TNA history, and very notable because it is the final month before Spike TV. The next episode of Impact we'll watch is the Spike debut.
I'm excited. And we're going to do a watch along for that.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, if you'd like to hear the watch along for our next episode, we'll do both Bound for Glory 2005 and the Spike TV debut episode, which I've always insisted is as close as TNA has ever put on to a perfect episode of television. So,
and I will tell you it's bad and terrible.
So that's coming up too. But yeah, we are literally on the cusp. We are on the edge of Spike TV. Unbreakable is the last new show before Spike TV. They take a couple weeks off of TV. They didn't tape TV after Unbreakable. They're coming back for the Spike debut on October 1st. So yeah, right on the edge of like the boom period for TNA.
It's all about the boom. Yes, we're about to approach Spike TV. We're going to start seeing TNA do numbers that AEW would quiver for, that they wish they could have. I'm trying to start a culture war. Is it going to work?
A TNA versus AEW culture war?
Yeah.
I do occasionally throw shots like that by being like, more people have watched Max and Jeremy Buck on television than ever watched Matt and Nick Jackson.
Didn't I say that to you?
And throwing those kind of elbows out on Twitter when people get mad at me.
Yeah, of course. You got to hit it every time, you know? But yeah, I don't know. It's very exciting. It's exciting to see the TNA sort of hit that next level era where the general wrestling zeitgeist sort of remembers it. You know, we get to the stage where people have nostalgia for the company because they saw it on this gigantic channel.
Yeah, because this is when they like well and truly break into the mainstream. Like by the time they get on Spike, their audience will be about 4 times larger than it was when it was on FSN. Like FSN had them reach like 150, 200,000. Spike on Saturday nights will end up being 800, 900,000. So a huge bunch of people will start watching TNA for the first time this month. And that, as you said, that's like the breakthrough of the nostalgia point. And like it's this company finally making it.
They said we wouldn't make 1 month. They said we wouldn't make 1 year. But now we've made it.
But yeah, after over 3 years of like struggling, there was that period early in this year and kind of into the summer where they were going off TV where it was looking pretty shaky. And if the Spike deal didn't come, they probably would have ended up on WGN. But I think the WGN deal would have ended up closer to FSN than it ended up being on Spike. Because I think Spike ended up being like a perfect storm factor, some of which we'll talk about right now in a sec, that kind of helped launch TNA. And WWE accidentally tripped and fell their way into accidentally launching TNA.
Yeah. So, you know, it's all very exciting. Exciting to see TNA take its place in wrestling history at that next level as being a legitimate number B. Number B? B is a number.
They haven't like really been a national company. They've been available nationally, but like they haven't really been a national wrestling company. But like Spike, that's national TV. That's like proper real deal national TV.
Yeah, we are for real now.
So notes on the Spike deal. TNA's final deal with Spike TV stipulates that Spike sells the ad time, not TNA. TNA will get 2 minutes of ad time each show to promote its upcoming pay-per-views and other merchandise. Otherwise, Spike gets to keep all the revenue that it sells as part of its Slammin' Saturday Night block. TNA doesn't have to pay for time though, which is a much better deal than they had with Fox Sports Net and gives them a legitimate chance at turning a profit next year.
The not paying for things generally is a better deal.
It's funny, it's like, we're not making any money directly from Spike. The idea is like, the extra audience we'll get on Spike, we can then push toward merchandise, push toward pay-per-view, and that's how we'll make our money. But Spike sell all the ads and they make all the money. But it's like, but also we're not paying Spike to be on the air, which is a huge difference from Fox Sports Net.
Yeah, that's an immediate sort of return of investment.
Like
not even return of investment, just lack of investment to put in.
Yeah, it cost them a great deal less money to actually put the show on.
Which was kind of the big thing that was killing them leading up to this, was the production cost of putting on these shows. So why we started to see the same wrestlers work every episode of TV instead of a mix then a match, and why they moved to taping on 1 day or 2 days instead of doing them a little more sporadically.
Yeah, because these shows we've been watching have been taped over like a 1 day block, 4 hours, and you can tell based on the energy of those crowds that it is the kind of Ring of Honor-esque long TV taping that people get bored of.
Probably the same amount of matches on all 4 episodes of TNA as one Ring of Honor show.
Yeah, because they do tape, like, it's usually 5-ish on Impact at the moment. They change that when they get to Spike. I think it gets down to 3, which I think makes for a better paced show with 3 longer matches than like a 5, like mixed matches, 1 long and kind of 4 bunch of short ones. But yeah, so they would tape about 20 matches plus some explosion matches, which would probably bring you up to like 25 over the course of one TV taping, which is too many matches to sit through.
Yeah, it's almost 1 ROH.
1 episode, yeah.
Yeah.
Good God, why does that show the way it is? Stop it.
Well, gotta do what you gotta do.
After concerns a month ago that TNA might get on Spike but not get the support needed from the network to be a success, Spike TV stepped up Monday night.
Spike TV is not the stepfather, but it is the father that stepped up.
Oh no. Yeah, Spike executives are walking around backstage wearing that t-shirt. During Raw this week, Spike TV dedicated 2 commercials to promoting the debut of TNA Impact on Spike TV on October 1st at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. The commercials showed generic high spots from TNA without focusing on any stars. While there was brief close-ups of Raven's face, it was to show him in agony, not to showcase his star power. I like this kind of analysis. It's like, what's going on in these commercials? Raven was in pain. He wasn't shown as a star. Jeff Jarrett wasn't in it at all.
I mean, there is like legitimate sort of critiquing to be had there. Like, if I'm promoting that show, I'm like, here is Raven, here is Rhino, here is some people you realize, here is AJ doing some crazy bullshit that you've never seen before. Go watch this show. Look how much crazier and more interesting it looks than what you're watching right now.
It sounds like they did do that without focus, because like Raven and Jarrett never do anything. Well, Raven does cool stuff. Jarrett never does cool stuff. It does sound like this is like, here's AJ doing a flip dive. Here's Chris Daniels. I haven't seen this spot. I don't think it's available online, but I would.
That would have been fun if we could have found it.
I would guarantee, like, the Skipper Cage Walk is in there, stuff like that. It feels like that's the kind of thing that's like, like high impact, high spots, quick spot, TNA Impact debuts.
Yeah.
The airing ads during Raw is such a petty move, and I fucking love it.
I don't even think it's petty. I just think it's smart business.
Well, it is, because they're out of the WWE business and into the TNA business. So while they still have WWE on their show, they're using the WWE hours to push toward their future show, which it makes a lot of sense, but it makes WWE fucking mad. As I said, like, the WWE accidentally kind of created their own biggest rival during this era. Like, if the Spike relationship ended on better terms, and they're full-fledged war at the moment, by the way, which is so funny to think WWE and a television network are going to war. There's a whole bunch of stuff where, like, obviously the first Raw on USA is October 3rd, and the Spike TV had decided to counter-program that with a live UFC.
Rules.
So, like, not only are they, like, trying to use it to push TNA, it's like, we're going to war with the UFC too. Fuck you. You're being a bunch of bitches on the way out. We're also being a bunch of bitches on the way out. But that only benefits TNA, because TNA are, I'd imagine part of the reason Spike were like, hey, let's pick up TNA. Fuck WWE. They're being assholes to us. But also, now they're using WWE. They're leveraging the last few weeks of WWE to promote TNA's debut, which is only big for TNA. That is a huge thing for them to put, like, TNA ads in front of the probably 3 million or so people that were watching Raw at this stage. Like, it's so interesting to think about how WWE helped TNA considerably in this situation.
I hope when WWE ends up leaving USA or Fox, they piss them off on the way out too, and they're like, you know what, fuck it, let's get MLW.
Yeah. It's big time.
Yeah, be good. That'd be fun. But one thing I'm interested in seeing, because obviously I don't really remember, is if there's like any sort of distinguishable production boost when we head into the Spike era.
There's a note about that in a moment. Like, it'll still look like the Impact Zone. It's still the Impact Zone, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, when you think about, in the year plus we've been watching Impact, there's never been a match graphic.
Yeah.
You know? They've never had, like, that kind of production. They've never been like, we have match graphics.
We have vignette that isn't just one that we've put 17 times on show.
Like, you'll get match graphics for the pay-per-view matches, but for Impact, there's no such thing. There has never been a match graphic for an Impact match. There's no, like, format for that at this stage, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how TNA sort of steps up to being in a major television environment.
I always wonder, like, they stuck with Orlando for this, which is fine because they have a really engaged audience there at the moment, and you'll see for the debut that crowd are going bonkers, and it is cheaper to run the studio. But, like, they probably would have done a decent crowd for their national television debut, you know?
Make it like a pay-per-view on television.
Or at least, like, run a building.
I don't know, but maybe they want to, like, establish in the mind of the viewer that, like, this is what TNA looks like. This is what it is.
Yeah, and you can do that in a studio, and you also don't run the risk of bombing. So, you know, like, you know what it will look like on TV at least. You know you'll pack that place with 800 people.
You're doing a GFW amped in front of, like, this giant building that's only, like, 50% full.
Yeah, so you can control the optics a little more in the studio, I guess. But I like, that'll be a talking point more as we go, like, deeper into the Spike years and how long it takes them to get on the road a little more regularly. It's like they probably, like, they had the star power to draw.
But, like, you know, there's elements to seeing how this was done that I look at and I go, I probably would have done something a little different. Like, you could have done some, like, again, having not seen the ad that they ran, you could be like, hey, here's some glamour shots of Jeff Hardy. Here's some glamour shots of Rhino and Raven, just interspersed between these crazy high spots and the cage walk and AMW and all this, you know?
This unprecedented exposure for TNA gives it its best chance any promotion may have for many years in competing meaningfully with WWE sans a major network itself owning a starter promotion. WWE's entire audience will be exposed to ads over the next 4 weeks, so that first week's rating should tell a lot about TNA's potential to make a dent. And a note, Vince flipped out on the August 29th Raw when they aired a TNA commercial and started throwing some headsets.
You know, that's based. You know, that's sick. We love seeing Vince flustered.
Yeah, because they would have been in, like, the truck, because they would have had the Spike TV feed, as in, like, during the commercial, and there's a TNA ad. I would have loved to see, like, the truck's reaction live as they see that a TNA ad is airing during Raw.
They all just go deathly silent as Vince starts swearing.
The TNA contract with Spike TV goes into full effect on October 1st. It's a 52-week deal through late September of 2006. Judging from the TV commercials, the plan to change the name was overruled. Dave talked about how, like, there was a plan to call it Impact on Slammin' Saturday Night. They do mention Slammin' Saturday Night because that is the marketing block, but they are, like, the show is just still called Impact.
Should be Saturday Night Impact.
Well, it gets moved pretty quick, Dave, so that wouldn't have worked, would it?
I hate, like, the predisposition to adding like Friday night, Monday night, Saturday night. I think it's so dumb.
It's the kind of thing where it's like you want to market the day the show is on within the name, but also like people can work that shit out. Come on.
Yeah, every time I see Saturday Night Collision, I go, all right. Maybe it just offends me because it's not on Saturday for me.
Yeah, it's illegal to Australians.
Yeah, it's like, it's Thursday Night Dynamite, actually.
Isn't it Thursday morning Dynamite?
Yeah, all right, shut up. Don't question me in front of the people.
I'm sorry. We'll do this off air. TNA president Dixie Carter told TNAWrestling.com the promotion has achieved one of its major goals within its business model in being broadcast on a major cable network.
Be on a real channel.
It's like, number one goal, be on TV.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a pretty big one.
To be fair, number two goal is follow Dixie on Twitter, but...
Can't wait till we start seeing that.
Carter hinted that more big news is coming pertaining to the Spike deal on contract negotiations with Spike as well as WGN. Dixie said,
"We were fortunate enough to have interest from several places. In the end, we felt that Spike TV and their audience was the best place for us to be. These guys understand our audience and have experience in wrestling. They value the product and we look forward to growing our property together."
Wow, a new professional era for Dixie Carter now that she's on national television.
Yeah, I told you, I'm bringing new professional energy to this podcast. That means no more accents.
No more snakes in the back.
No more snakes in the back. I'm not about bits anymore.
You were just about professional analysis.
Yep. You know, I want to get that call up from Post Wrestling.
They do bits.
Cut that. They'll kick us off.
Rich will come for us. It's like, Post?
Yeah, be like, whoa.
You want to go to Post?
We got to get that call up to Spike TV.
First Brandon betrays us, now you do. Carter said TNA is considering each available free agent from WWE on a case-by-case basis, but the focus will remain on the current group of wrestlers who have worked their butts off for TNA and deserve this exposure to show the world how amazing they are.
The thing is, like, I think at this stage, it's, you know, they're being a bit more particular about which WWE guys are coming in, and that's smart. And they have such a core roster of, like, their own next stars that they can do that with, too. So, like, it's in a very healthy position to be in.
Yeah, it's kind of thing where it's like, you just have to add, like, 5 guys.
Just 5 guys?
Yeah, just 5 guys to your roster to, like, bolster
Bring
the
in
star
Taichi,
power.
Sonata, Doki, Kanemaru.
And when you think about, like, those 5 guys, you could say end up being like Nash, Team 3D, Christian, and Sting. Those are like a pretty good 5 guys.
Those are the best. That's pretty great 5 guys to get.
Like those are good guys to bolster the star power side of the roster, which you can argue is the part that's lacking.
Yeah. And like that's the thing too. Like they even have like a good little number of those people. But once you expand it just that little bit more, I think it's a good touch. Because like, especially watching Unbreakable, I had the thought of like, the world title picture feels like it's in a solid place star-wise now. And obviously the X Division title feels like it's in a great place too. So just having those couple more to fill it out. And honestly, having a gigantic name tag team would be really nice in this division that's kind of been the same 4 tag teams feuding with each other for a year.
You're sick of the Naturals in AMW?
I'm sick of the Naturals, AMW, and Team Canada wrestling each other like interchangeably on all of these pay-per-views.
On the topic of tag teams, TNA is pursuing a few non-TNA names, such as the Dudley Boys, Charlie Haas, and Shannon Moore, and looking to add a returning name such as Kevin Nash to create buzz amongst non-TNA followers. But the objective is to focus on the core roster members. Bubba Ray and Devon are asking for top dollar to appear in TNA, causing management to become reluctant to sign them. Not because they don't think they're worth it, because they're worried that other people will also ask for that kind of money.
Just try and talk them down as much as possible.
Yeah, it's like, listen guys, we think you're worth it, but if we give it to you, we'll have to give it to Raven. We don't want to give it to Raven.
Yeah, Raven and Rhino will come into our offices and be like, hey.
Yeah, AJ will be like, what the hell?
And they're like, no, definitely not you.
The biggest story surrounding the convention, this was Bubba and Devon were doing a convention. I think it was their first convention as the Dudley Boys post WWE, and WWE was like, hey, about that Dudley Boys name. Just days before it was to start, Devon Hughes and Mark LaMonica, Dave loves losing his shoot names, so WWE doesn't sue him either, actually. He's scared WWE will send him a legal letter for using the Dudley name.
It's like the Dudley... Oh, no.
Got a legal letter from WWE stating they were banned from not only using the Dudley's name, but the WWF was claiming trademarks on attire and catchphrases.
Just insane.
And told LaMonica that the photos of him on his own website, taken during his WWE tenure, constituted copyright infringement and threatened him with a $150,000 damage case per photo.
It's insane.
Like, WWE lowballed them. That's why they left. Like, WWE said, we don't think you're worth that, so less money. And they said, no, okay, we're leaving.
Yeah.
And then WWE turns around and is like, I get WWE. It shows actually a little bit how shook they are by the idea of TNA being on TV.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I was like, do you think this was all because Spike is coming around and they're like, these guys might go there. Let's fuck with them.
Yeah, they're pretty sure the Dudleys are headed to TNA. And they're like, we can't let them use the Dudley name. We can't even let them use the attire. We can't even let them say get the tables, which they never do. And Bubba, to be fair to him, always found the best, simplest way around it, which was always great.
What was it?
Where you would push Devon, he would shout Devon, and then he would count 1, 2, 3, and the crowd would do the get the tables.
That's great.
He would go on to do that for like 15 years. I was like, that is a fantastic way around a copyright infringement. Well done.
What are you going to do? Sue the fans?
Yeah, sue each individual person in that audience.
Do you think that the only reason they went so hard on the Dudleys is because of the Spike war? And that if Spike and WWE were amicable and they knew they were going to TNA, they would have just let them do it?
I don't think so. I think just the idea of TNA being on national TV has them not quite rattled, but in like, you know, anti-competitive shut it down WWE mode, which is one of their favorite modes.
It's the best mode.
So they're like, let's go hard on the Dudleys. Like, it's one thing, fair enough, the name, you know, you do own the name. There was some people who's like, you bought the name, you didn't create the name, and now you're enforcing it. But listen, that's how copyright law, they bought ECW, they own the name. And so, like, the name is fair game. Like, the attire is the thing that I'm like, fuck off.
It's like the one, if they could get away with it, they'd be like, we're also going to copyright the 3D and you can't have the move.
It is funny that they didn't have 3D trademarked, isn't it?
And that's the thing I've been thinking about a lot more lately with, like, you know, WWE being a little more enforcing on their copyright. I was like, are we ever going to get to a stage in wrestling where they're like, we are going to copyright this move. And if someone uses this move on a different pro wrestling show, we're going to sue them.
They could shut the entirety of independent wrestling down if they trademarked the Canadian Destroyer.
Trademark the Canadian Destroyer and trademark the RKO.
They could just kill all of wrestling in an instant.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Obviously, there's probably always going to be cases of it happening outside of the WWE first, but it's just an interesting sort of thing, you know?
So, as I said, WWE offered them deals that lowballed them, and that's why they left. So that does what, like, that is the thing that makes it feel extra petty for me. It's like, you lowballed them. You can't be assholes about them leaving.
Well, they can, because they're going to go to their biggest competition in years.
In another sign of Spike TV's support of TNA, not only did the 2 more 15-second commercials air during Raw, but the network has scheduled TNA for a Monday night replay each week starting October 3rd.
That's sick.
Although it won't go head-to-head with Raw, Monday nights will feature 2 prominent national promotions on national cable TV for the first time since the final edition of Nitro in 2001. So it's a midnight replay, so it'll be about an hour after Raw airs. But yeah, it's another one of those things is like, fucking hate you, WWE. We're going to put them on Mondays too.
God, I really want them to piss off USA and Fox now. I really want them to piss off USA and Fox.
Again, it's so funny to see a whole fucking television network going to war with WWE.
How hilarious would it be to see, like, MLW just get, like, an influx of a giant amount of money? And then it's like, all right, go ahead.
Go for it. Go to war.
And then Jacob Fatu doing his Bloodline promos.
And yeah, WWE would shut that down very quickly then.
But that's what I want to say. That's what I want. And then USA gets all pissy and they're like, here, have all this money, MLW. God, it would be fun. I want a major pro wrestling show on every day of the week on a major network. That's my dream.
Probably love to have more than one.
No, just give me Monday through Saturday. Oh, and when I say a major pro wrestling show, I also don't mean Raw or SmackDown. Like, I want other companies that all have major pro wrestling shows every day of the week.
Yeah, so Raw and SmackDown are cancelled, and then other shows get Monday
and
Friday.
They can still run. I'm just not going to watch them. I want every other company to have a giant show.
I like the way you're okay with NXT, though.
Oh, I'm not watching that either. I also said major.
Tuning in with all your Lone Wolf Baron Corbin nostalgia.
Yeah, I was there for that. I don't have no nostalgia for it.
That midnight on Monday time slot currently features Maximum MLB. I guess technically midnight on Tuesday, for being pedantic about it. Currently airs MLB highlights from the previous week. Monday's airing will be a replay of the show that aired on Saturdays. The new ads for TNA Impact on this week's Raw featured high impact high spots that blow away most of the athleticism that WWE allows its talent to display. Jeff Jarrett was shown during the ad, but not as a centerpiece. The spot ended with a close-up of Monty Brown yelling.
Okay. Man, I really feel like I would put a lot of Jeff Hardy on that.
I assume he's doing like a swanton. And again, I haven't seen the videos.
Yeah, but like I feel like I would make him a very distinct piece of it.
I assume there's like him throwing himself off a stage.
Yeah, I would have him do a little dance too.
I would devote the entire 15-second spot to that time he dropkicked the table after it went wrong.
Yeah, it would just be that clip.
It's like, what's going on with Jeff these days? Jeez.
I hope they had like some witty tagline that was like, you know, I smacked it raw, I want some more, give me some TNA.
Oh yeah, bring back the Ice Pact at Raw, I want more TNA.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Everyone should be wearing those shirts on the Spike debut.
That'd be perfect. Like some get the F out style thing on these promotions. Go extra petty with it.
E out.
Get the E out of wrestling.
Bill Banks of TNAWrestling.com reports that TNA will be updating the Impact Zone with more pyrotechnics and new lighting. New video packages, graphics, and other production features are in the works to give the presentation of the product a new feel on Spike TV.
Nice. I have a production note for you.
Oh, go for it.
I have a pitch of something I want in the intro. I want Rhino's gore, gore, gore.
Like his catchphrase?
Yeah, on one of the episodes, he screams gore, gore, gore a bunch. I want that in the intro.
Okay, I'll send that note.
Cool. Send that note to our production team.
Oh, there's actually an interesting actual production note this month that changed. That's like it's a pretty major change to TNA presentation on the whole.
I thought you meant with us.
Yeah, actually, we're doing the show with 17% more pyro.
Wow, thank God. About time. I have been pitching that for a while.
So at some stage during the show, you'll just hear a random out-of-place explosion, and that's the pyro.
You now have to edit that in.
Oh, I do, don't I?
But just edit in, like, the Revolution... it's like sparklers and shit that went off during Moxley and Omega.
I'll edit in the Fight Forever version of it.
Yeah, there you go.
But for most of the history of Impact, I think all of the history of Impact, the television show, you have not been able to hear JB.
Yeah.
Which is a thing I don't think we've ever mentioned. But the way they do it for some reason, it was a WCW thing as well, so it goes back to that. But you can't actually hear the ring announcer. The ring announcer's there, you can hear him in the background doing the ring announcing, but the commentary always talked over it.
And now they're going to make that change.
They made that change this month.
I didn't notice it.
You could actually hear JB. JB actually did the ring introductions, and then Tenay and West came in.
Well, there you go. It's an appreciative change.
So you can hear JB do all his intros.
How do you rate JB as a ring announcer?
I thought this era he was better. He gave it more socks. He did it more in like 2014 as well, and he's like clearly broken by wrestling and not giving it the same like enthusiastic punch to his ring introductions. But if you're to be like, what's his best role? It's still backstage announcer.
Yes, of course. And probably behind the scenes.
Well, that's debatable these days based on NXT.
Well, I don't count that. That's not a real promotion.
Several Spike TV executives are backstage for the TNA Unbreakable pay-per-view. Several sources say they stayed out of everyone's way and didn't interfere in any decisions or operations. They did seem to be pleased to be there and happy with what they saw backstage and in the ring.
Because Kid Cash is in there fighting people.
Yeah, Kid Cash just or Vinny Rue being like, guys, you need to actually get these D'Amore and Tenay and all those guys out so that I can do this properly the way you want it to do.
No. Well, as we know through history, Spike TV and Vince Russo don't exactly go along. Just
like when the Panda people first started showing up and like there was just untold politics. It's like, get that Jeff Jarrett guy out. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
The Spike TV guys, they seem like carnies anyway, so they probably would be like, yeah, okay.
They were especially impressed by what they heard from the crowd. TNA president Dixie Carter and top executive Frank Dickerson both seemed satisfied with events throughout the night. Several sources have commented about the positive atmosphere backstage at TNA lately. While there are still some turf wars between former WWE wrestlers and longtime TNA wrestlers, there is not overt animosity visible as everyone seems to be working together to make TNA work.
Wow. Old friends wrestling. Total friends action.
It is nice that they do all seem to be pulling in the same direction toward the Spike debut.
Well, they're probably like, wow, something seems to be going right here. Who would have thunk?
That is the time when there is like maximum bickering. It's like when the ship has to be righted, everyone's like, my way to right it is best. Whereas when everything's going fine, everyone's like, let's ride this wave for a while.
Let's just see where it goes.
To stick to my boat metaphor. That brings us, we'll do a full rundown. We don't normally do individual episodes, but this is an important individual episode. To the first episode of Impact on Spike TV, October 1st, 2005, taped a few days earlier on the 27th. From the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida, it's the 65th episode of Impact, the debut on Spike TV, and for me, like, a borderline perfect episode of TV for what it was trying to do.
See, you love this episode of TV way more than I do. Like, I think this is good TV, and it's purely because I'm looking through it with 2023 AEW TV exists eyes, and I'm like...
If you're like, this doesn't have a match
of the year candidate, I am going to say thought! Let me finish the words coming out of my mouth!
I need to tell you to fuck off first, but go on.
I was just gonna say, for it to be a actual perfect episode of television, I need a match above 4 stars. But with the understanding that this is a debut episode and we're going in there with a specific set of a plan to go in there, show these guys off, introduce people to a new audience, I think it succeeds thoroughly at it.
You're also dealing with an hour.
Yeah. Which
is harder to give people the time to have a 4-star quality match without shortchanging everybody else. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I really do think this as a cohesive piece of this is what TNA is. That's the pitch of this
mission statement.
This is who AJ is. This is what our tag team division does. This is the big angle. These are the big debuts. They put the X division front and center. They put their homegrown guys front and center. They introduce them well for the most part. I think they do a darn good job of just being this is TNA. And I think they give people a pretty darn good reason to come back next week.
Yeah, that's actually something that's really great, is their week-to-week sort of promotion.
There was talk when Collision debuted, which I did really enjoy the first episode of Collision, but I think one of the criticisms after that first episode was that was a good episode of TV, but they gave no reason to come back next week. And they kind of didn't. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that they've gotten better about now, because every time you're watching Collision, they always go this is what's on next week's Collision.
Whereas this episode ends with the 1-2 punch of the debut of Team 3D and the return of Kevin Nash, and then ends with 3D setting up the match against AMW for the next week's episode. And it's that's a good hook for next week. That's good job. So the episode opens with a Barry Scott narrated video about all the moments building in TNA, how they toiled in fields of relative obscurity, but they toil in anonymity no longer. And I kind of love that they pretty honestly pitched themselves as that. It's listen, we've kind of been under the radar. We get Fox Sports wasn't really a real TV deal. We wouldn't have said it at the time, but we get it kind of wasn't. But this is the actual big stage.
I keep reading toiled in the fields of relative obscurity as toilet in the fields of relative obscurity, and I'm that's accurate too.
Yeah, you live in Australia, you have outhouses.
Not anymore.
But you do have toilets in fields of relative obscurity in your country. I think more than most countries. Suddenly veered into Australian racism.
Not a good look.
I do find it funny that because they focus on the champions here. They're Styles, face of the X Division great, Jarrett, cunning, coy, NWA champion, the Naturals.
And the Naturals are also here.
They're oh, youth and vigor, they're great, we love them. But it's the Naturals, huh?
Yep, the big 4 that TNA always goes to. Jarrett, Styles, the Naturals.
I do love this package. I think, Barry Scott, as we said a million times and will continue to say for the rest of TNA history, lends a gravitas and a credibility to TNA that they sometimes don't even deserve, but his voice just carries that kind of weight, so that when he is AJ Styles is the future of professional wrestling, you're you are stating a true fact.
Yeah, you believe.
And I quipped on the watch along that the real only purpose for TNA in the first 3 years was to create cool B-roll for video packages for their debut on Spike.
And it's accurate, and it works.
There's some good, all the features on this show where they're here's cool shit, here's the X Division, and it's just guys doing dives, or this opening package which is just guys doing cool moves and skipper cage walks as you'd expect, and the Monty thing is just Monty pouncing people. It's exactly what you'd want, and who needed to watch we could have just skipped straight to here and just realized the rest was just video package fodder.
You don't realize that if a company does get TV, they kind of do need to have sort of this back catalog of stuff to use.
Because that's the hard part, starting from zero. It's it's a lot easier to jump on TV and introduce AJ Styles when you have 3 years of footage of AJ Styles being awesome.
Yeah, that's probably the reason that to keep it sort of on the forefront of the news cycle, but also that reason of having footage is why AEW ran those events once or twice a month leading up to their TNT debut.
Yeah, just have a little bit of B-roll. You need a little bit of B-roll in your life.
You need B-roll. It's a very important part of any sort of video media.
Mike TNA introduces us to our 60-minute adrenaline rush, stating that we've never seen anything like this on Spike TV. They don't use, well, they use that as an outro song for years, but they only use it as the intro song once. Oh, we have the proper TNA on Spike intro song as well, with the freaking Styles forearm and Monty Brown pounce transition, which is the coolest thing that's ever been in the opening titles of a wrestling show. Where like Monty pounces Mikey Bats out of the frame and Styles comes in with the forearm. It's so good. Wrestling shows should be good.
My favorite thing about this is like, this is clearly your nostalgia point where you're like, this is the greatest intro, blah blah blah, and I'm like, I mean, I'm waiting for Cross the Line.
Well, if they put Monty pouncing Mikey Bats in the Cross the Line intro,
I mean, we could do that.
That's true. Do you have those kind of video editing skills?
I could find a way.
There's YouTube tutorials. Yeah, I like the little side swipe at WWE with the "You've never seen anything like this on Spike TV."
I love petty bullshit. My favorite thing.
Like, there is a note that Spike TV officials, and we'll talk a lot about the end of the Spike WWE relationship in a minute. That's another news note. But Spike TV officials have indicated to TNA that they don't want any direct shots taken at WWE during Impact broadcasts. There doesn't seem to be a big protest coming from TNA brass regarding the matter, but Spike may be gun shy after being portrayed as petty for trying to censor WWE's attempts to plug that their homecoming show would be on USA Network.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I definitely read that as gunshy. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
You're trying to work out what the word gunshy meant?
Yeah, I was like, what? It sounds dirty.
To be fair, gunshy is not one word as it is written in PW Tort, so you have a fair reason to shout at Wade there.
Yeah, I was very confused. I was like, what does that mean?
Spike may have been gunshy.
Gunshy.
But yeah, we'll go into like the drama about the last episode of Raw on Spike in a minute, where they tried to censor WWE. It's great fun. But apparently they got painted as the villains in that, even though they're absolutely not. And they were like, all right, just ease off WWE.
I mean, WWE are like masters of not being the villains in stories where they're clearly the villains.
It is one of the better things they're at. We have match graphics for the first time on Impact.
And I think it's great.
Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of like, how would you, orange neon almost? Is that a good way to describe it?
Like industrial.
Yeah, it's like an orange neon sign from a cyberpunk movie that just happens to have like Jeff Hardy versus Rhino on it.
Yeah, it's cool.
It was one of those things. It's like, I only realized when watching that first episode, it's like, we've never had match graphics.
And how much it added.
It's like, we're on 65 episodes of Impact and they've never had a match graphic.
Yeah,
these are the first match graphics in Impact history, as Mike TNA tells us that our main event will be Jeff Hardy versus Rhino, and we'll also see controversy in Canada later tonight. How do you feel about Hardy and Rhino as the main event?
If you're not going to run a big title match, it's about as good as you can ask for.
Yeah, I guess when like the whole reason you still have Jeff Hardy around is because you want Jeff Hardy on Spike, you might as well put him front and center in the main event on the first show.
I have a bigger problem with the first 2 weeks having their biggest matches end in bullshit.
Yeah, not even bullshit. They both end in DQ.
Yeah, like, that's not the best foot to be getting off on.
Yeah, it's not even the case that like they end in, run-in, interference, and a finish. Neither of them have finishes.
Yeah, like that's my biggest problem is, like, for the company that's preaching how it's meant to be different and not like that bad wrestling company, to be doing the same kind of bullshit is awful.
The second show is probably more defensible in terms of not doing a finish.
Yeah, but like that means on the first show in your first main event, have a fucking finish.
Yeah, but like I was gonna say, in like Team 3D AMW, I'm kind of okay with them being like, we don't want to beat either team. Then you'd be like, don't book the match, but I get why they booked the match too. So in both cases, I understand that decision. In terms of Hardy Rhino, you can pin either guy.
Yeah, that's silly to me.
It's not a case that like you shouldn't pin, because like you shouldn't have 3D beat AMW on their first night. You shouldn't have AMW beat Team 3D on their first night. Fine. And again, usually I'd be like, why would you book the match? But you book the match as an attraction that can bring people back for the second episode.
You could have done like a 6-man.
You could have, but then you'd still be like, do we pin Jarrett or do we pin Nash?
I mean, I'm saying that you could have chucked like Jeff or something on the face team.
But you couldn't pin Jeff on the first night, Liam.
You can pin him. But yes, you could. That's my difference.
Yeah, that's my ultimate point. You just could have pinned Rhino or you could have pinned Hardy. It doesn't matter. Neither of those two guys have anything going.
Rhino isn't winning the title.
No, he's just in a monster's ball.
So you can pin Rhino.
So then we go to our opening contest on Spike TV, the phenomenal AJ Styles versus Roderick Strong.
They do be having an ROH match on TV.
They have a beautiful 4-minute sprint, which we've whiplashed too far the other way, where it's this era was this was the only kind of match you'd get on TV between wrestlers like this.
Yeah, because they wouldn't get any more time.
But now we've whiplashed probably too far in the other direction. It's we need more TV sprints. But it's I think the TV sprint is not only an amount of time. It's it is a state of mind.
Yeah. Oh, and it's like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a game plan more than anything.
Because they don't go out there to have match of the year. They don't go out there to do a million near falls. They don't go out there to have the best match they can. Which you might be why shouldn't you? It's sometimes there's a lot of matches on a show. Not every match should be going out there to have the best match they can. That's just the way shows should be paced.
Tell that to me on TW when we book all out every single match.
Whereas this is 4 minutes, and the main aim of it is to present AJ Styles as the coolest wrestler on earth. And they said they did a fan poll to determine who would be in the first match on Spike, and shock of all shocks, AJ won.
Wait, what is this fucking note about this match?
Oh, there's a wild note about this match after we finish talking about this match. But there's a moment in this match where you might realize NWA-TNA explains the significance of the six-sided ring twice. And part of me was oh, that's weird, but maybe they're just trying to drive it home.
Ad break, catch people on the second time.
But this match continues all the way through, so maybe there was some miscommunication about that. Yeah, I was oh, that's a choice. But then you realize that this match had a finish bought so badly, they sent the two guys out there again and spliced 2 different matches together.
I'm sorry, Garrett. I have to remove my rating for this match.
Oh, because it was 2 matches? Oh, you've been worked.
This is not available. I cannot rate.
I insist you put every rating like that on every Lucha Underground and Rampage match too.
Yep.
There's
a difference between being taped and edited and being spliced together between 2 matches because they fucked it up so hard.
That's taped TV, pal. People should do more of that, by the way.
No, that's ruining the art form.
TV matches should be chopped to death. Screw wrestlers and their art form.
You've been in the business too long.
The match was originally meant to be 9 minutes, cut back under 5 when it was decided they would have a better match that was meant to showcase Styles than go out there and have an even Stevens match, which was probably the right call. Because Strong is great, but AJ is the face of the company and shouldn't be going 50-50 on the first episode of Spike. Unless it's with, Joe. The Strong match that aired on TV was the original, but the ending was filmed later and edited into the match that aired in place of the original finish. The match's original ending was deemed unairable.
What was it?
It was just a Styles clash. I'm seeing there was people at this taping. If you were at this taping, let us know how badly that first Styles and Roddy finish went.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But as it was presented on TV, absolutely rocked. They went out there, they worked a razor sharp pace. They worked their I'm doing my first match on real TV kind of pace.
Yeah, well, which was kind of the theme of everyone.
Yeah, it's just we have real eyeballs now. There might be nearly 1 million people watching this show, which is far and away. I guess some of these people might have worked Velocity, which would have had 500,000 people watching.
But also that's Velocity.
Yeah, and it doesn't count. So, the difference in the number of people who were, by the time Joe was on his episode, which was the most watched episode of the month, the number of people being introduced to Joe for the first time in that moment is probably, close to, 800,000 to 1 million people watching Samoa Joe for the first time.
Yeah. There's a reason there's some pep in their step.
Yeah, you think the number of people exposed to Joe through Japan and through Ring of Honor is, pretty small, especially in those days where indies were buy a DVD. There was a cost incurred for the youngins when they wanted to get into independent wrestling, unlike these days where you just search free matches on YouTube and watch whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, with your Roo tubes and your Billies.
We do this round at least every 5 to 10 episodes about how kids these days have it so good when it comes to accessing wrestling.
Oh, I can watch New Japan World. I don't have to go to Vimeo. Fuck you.
Well, they shut down Pivot Share, so...
I told you, I'm in my old jaded era now.
I know, you're supposed to be in the middle ground.
Nah, I'm leaning the other way. I'm too much like you. I learned from watching you.
You got 70% more bitter when I was going to give out to you about it not having a 4-star match criticism.
I was just let me get my point. Then you can yell at me.
Your bitterness says you've officially ticked into it now. You've hit that's the moment.
I just want good matches.
You will look back on it and be like, that is the moment I hit my late 20s.
It's like in Oppenheimer when in the background of the music is suddenly like intensifying. That was happening for the first 40 minutes of the podcast, and then that's when the bomb dropped.
They just went out, had a great match. Styles hit the reverse DDT, but where he did it where he like sprung from the apron onto the like the opposite side of the ropes and then back into the DDT, and that is like the moment where I'm like, you're the best wrestler in the world.
There's always one or two per AJ match point.
Yeah, he also did he's one of two people who broke out a dive and broke his legs off the rail.
Yes, it was a big night for that.
Showing his true commitment to the brand, him and Chris Sabin just shattering their shins and ankles off of guardrails.
I wonder how many people tuned into this show and saw TNA for the first time and were like, what the fuck is this ring?
Yeah, because TNA does explain it. He's like, it offers more options for high-risk offense. It's very unique. It's better for the X Division guys. That's like the pitch. But like that's the appeal, right? It's meant to stop you in your tracks when you're changing the channel. You're meant to see like, oh, like that's the wrestling ring that I'm not used to. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, why is it like that? And you stop and watch for a few minutes and hopefully get hooked.
Do you think that in 2023, in a post-TNA Spike TV world, that if a company debuted on a mainstream channel with a six-sided ring, it would still sort of blow people away in that same way?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because, like, how many of the new AEW, WWE boom audience, right? How many of them have seen the six-sided?
They would be aware of it, though.
Maybe. Do you think that these 10-year-olds who watch The Bloodline and think it's the best shit ever know what a six-sided ring is?
Well, the 10-year-olds know.
By 10-year-olds, I mean all of their fans up until, like, 25.
Yeah. But, like, if you were, like, of the years 18 to 25...
I picked the 1 year younger than me to insult.
Yeah.
As the cutoff.
Yeah. You're a smart old man now. We've discussed this. This is the theme of the show.
That's so fucking funny that I defaulted to the 1 year below me.
If you are an 18 to 25-year-old watching the WWE and that's all you watch...
You're a fucking child.
Because of what we talked about earlier about, like, the access to like, classic TNA, like, they would have seen, like... They would be aware that a six-sided ring is associated with TNA.
Maybe. I think it would be still a significant number of people who would, but maybe less than you would assume.
But like, I think it would still be eye-catching for the same reason it was for TNA, but I think a pretty large amount would be like, oh, it's like TNA. Even if they didn't watch TNA, they'd be like, that's the TNA thing. That's the thing I know about TNA.
That's the AAA thing.
Yeah, TNA stole the AAA thunder. AAA must be raging. Daniels watches on from ringside because he will get the X Division title match. It's his rematch after losing at Unbreakable, but it will be Iron Man 2 at Bound for Glory. Strong sick kicks Styles in the corner, falls with a backbreaker, but then Styles wins with the Styles Clash. A lovely 4-minute TV sprint. The crowd are going apeshit for both matches, I guess. They're going crazy no matter what. And Styles looks great. It's a great kickoff to the show. It's super high energy. Strong's the perfect guy for him to be in there with because, well, he's Roderick Strong. And great way to start a TV show.
Shout outs to the people who went to this taping, got to see two Roddy AJ men.
Yeah, it's so funny that they didn't air one. Like, they didn't just say, oh, we'll just air the second one. They were like, the start of the first one is better, but the end of the second one is better. So splice those bad boys together.
And it worked. Like, if I didn't read this note...
Yeah, the only tip-off is the TNA commentary, which most people would be like, weird that he explained it twice. Mike and Don welcome us to the show. They plug Monty coming up, more X Division is coming up, Rhino and Hardy's our main event, and explain that they will show all the controversy in Canada footage as Jeff Jarrett is once again NWA World Champion. We get a feature on Monty Brown.
Vignettes!
Where they finally pull out the actual money. Well, I wonder is it Spike money, or maybe Spike have the archive somehow. But there's finally Monty Brown football footage.
Yeah, I'm guessing like Spike just owned or had it for some reason.
Or they were like, all right, we're debuting on TV, we should license, because they actively like shout out, oh, that's NFL Films footage. So like they got it from somewhere, NFL Film.
Maybe whether they just asked.
Yeah, it might just be a case where it's like, oh, it's just a $50 license fee, and it's like, oh, good.
Yeah, as I've learned from doing the Cinema Club stuff and getting licenses for things, it's not as expensive thing.
Well, depending on what you're asking for, and I guess it probably depends.
And the context
asking as well. Yeah.
Like, if you're like, I need this footage to broadcast, more expensive than, hey, I'm renting essentially this movie to display at a theater.
So, yeah, they showed Monty playing football, doing tackles, playing for the Patriots and the Bears.
I don't
Bills.
describe it as a tackle. I like to think he's pouncing the other football.
And in that moment, he's like, wrestling.
He goes, ah.
No, he goes, ah, these days, apparently.
He should have had immigrant songs.
Because franchise has Monty, and franchise is like, ooh, you're an action franchise, and Monty is just like, ah. He's such a weirdo. He's such a freak. I love him so much.
Clearly, that was one of WWE's biggest fumbles, is when they brought him in, they just made him a guy and not some weird freak.
Like, every time, we said this with, like, even the Asylum stuff with Scott Hudson, he's just so weird in that wrestling way that makes him utterly compelling, and it's the best. The nerd he's about to face will feel the pounce. Raven then tries to break into the impact zone with a trash can. He's like, you screwed me, you took my belt, what the hell's happening, before Larry Z has him ejected.
The thing about Raven is... he made it to the top with arguably, like, the worst he's looked physically.
Yeah.
Like, he does not look like a guy that I would... Like, if he was still 2003, is that when he came in? End of 03?
Start of 03, January.
Start of 03. When he came in 03, that was a guy that was, like, my top guy. Now, he just looks slobbish, and I kind of get moving away from him. I would have done it in a better way.
Also, like, this is it. Raven's done as a top guy in this company. He's never even remotely near it again.
Yeah, I wonder how much of, like, if Raven still looked like he looked at the start of 03, I wonder if that would have been a different consideration.
Like, the rest of this Raven run is like a year-long feud with Larry Zbyszko, which you can look forward to. And then, like, the weird serotonin stuff, which is, like, fine for what it is, but it's not important. And then he's done.
Until Dr. Stevie.
Yeah, and he comes back right in your nostalgia window.
The first show I ever watched. The first segment I ever saw.
Ever in your life.
Of TNA? Yeah.
You did exclaim, "This is TNA," when Raven tried to break in and hit Larry with a trash can.
Yeah, because it was just, like, so out of nowhere. And I was like, this is what TNA will be for the next decade.
Monty then had a squash. He beat Lex Lovett. He pounced him.
It was cool.
He's Monty Brown. I love him. We had a feature on the X Division showing, like, a parade of cool moves, again, making very good use of their B-roll.
It's so much like Oppenheimer. The pacing of this show with its editing is really well done. Just like, boom, boom, next thing.
Yeah, because you have an hour, which, like, in practicality is 42 minutes. Yeah. There's a lot they need to squeeze into this 42 minutes in terms of, like, introduce Monty, introduce AJ, do an X Division match, do a main event, and then do a main event segment. And, like, apparently they a bunch of stuff had to get cut down. We'll talk about that, especially in the main event segment, where that segment is very clearly cut to shit. And, like, the next match is even cut down, but I think probably for its benefit. The Sabin, Petey, and Shelley match, I think it's probably better off that match was, like, sliced a little bit. But yeah, it's like, oh, we were even a little too ambitious for what we were squeezing into this show.
Yeah, but hey, it worked in the end. Just had to get to the old cutting room floor.
Yeah, and the benefit is, as you said, it creates a show that has, like, a propulsiveness to it. That is just, like, everything. It is, like Mike Tenay said at the start, it's like your 60-minute adrenaline rush. That's, like, the pitch of this. Which was the same thing they used at, like, the start of Rampage, if you remember, like, the fastest hour in wrestling. It's like the idea of, like, this hour will fly by, and it does. These episodes are much easier to watch than some of, like, particularly the FSN era episodes were.
Of course.
Sabin, Petey, Shelley in a three-way.
Rocks. They're just doing a bunch of bullshit.
I kind of love that, like, this match is on the first episode on Spike. Because, like, everything else I think is, like, a kind of default choice. Like, there's gonna be an AJ match. Monty's charismatic, give him a promo, give him a squash.
And our stars doing a match in the main.
Yeah, everything else is kind of like, well, if 100 people were to book this show, 100 of them would have booked the rest of the show, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
This match is the one that I'm like, this took, like, a little bit of, like, faith in these three guys to put on this show, in the sense that, like, if you had 100 people book this show, I think maybe 10 people book a match like this.
You might get a Sabin squash from a lot of people. but like this specific with time 3-way instead of like even doing like a 4-way, like it's such a specific set of circumstances that led to it.
Yeah, and it's the 3 Scott D'Amore students, so that's maybe why it ultimately ends up happening with Sabin, Petey, and Shelley. But it's like 3 TNA guys, 3 of the better guys in the X Division. It's just, you want to establish that the X Division is more than just AJ, which I think is smart. You give them, like, as you said, a surprising amount of time. I know they had some chopped off, but they still go out there and absolutely kill it for like 8 minutes. It's a really great match. They kick ass. Sabin does this through the leg Shelley suicide dive, so we get like a little bit of machine guns.
Yeah, we had a little taste.
Sabin breaks his shins doing a springboard moonsault onto the guardrail. Don West is like the X, in my mind, stands for extreme.
Also, Shelley has found his look now.
Yeah, he is. He's Alex Shelley, and we're right on the verge of him like going into Planet Jarrett Paparazzi production stuff, which is where he finds his TNA sense of personality. Anyway.
Yeah, we're on the road to the machine guns. It feels.
They did a machine gun spot in this match.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. Sabin pins Shelley with the cradle shock, and you like, Spike debut. You didn't do a Canadian Destroyer. You're crazy. Because if you look at the video package, there's like 3 Canadian Destroyers in the video package before the match, and you're like, you're crazy. What do you? Oh no, he hits it after the match. There you go.
And then it was in that moment I was like, Scott D'Amore's the greatest of all time. Like, he's like, I know that Petey's not winning, but he's got to hit the Destroyer.
He's got to hit the move. You got to get the move on the Spike debut.
Exactly.
Franchise asks Larry about surprises. He's like, wait and see. But then Tito Ortiz shows up.
August 1 warning.
We are pretty close to August 1. 10-year anniversary of it, for the love of God. Asks about the business they have to take care of, and Larry invites him into his office.
Huntington Beach?
The Huntington Beach bad boy.
Boy.
Which is where Joe was billed from for a while, wasn't it? Huntington Beach?
Yeah, I think he still is.
Not the Isle of Samoa, which is where he was billed from in TNA.
Yeah, I think they're back to Huntington Beach.
We have a feature on the 3 Live crew about how funny and entertaining they are. And they'll face Team Canada next week.
Great.
That brings us to the main event of the show, or well, the last match. It wasn't the thing that went on.
The main event was the segment.
Rhino and Jeff Hardy.
They did some bullshit, and then a bunch of people came out and beat him up.
Yeah, it was the weakest of the matches on the show, and that includes the Monty Brown squash. Because that rocked, and the 2 X Division matches rocked, and this was just kind of there. It continues the streak of 2005 Jeff, unless he's falling off ladders or the top of the Impact Zone, which we'll get to in a little bit. He's not particularly interesting these days, and this is a not particularly interesting match with Rhino.
Let me give Jeff Hardy a little credit. It does look like he cares at least now, because there was a run where like visibly it didn't look like he gave a single shit what he was doing, and now he at least looks like he is enjoying being at work. I'll give him that.
I think I'd go as far as to say like he doesn't actively not care.
Yeah, like that. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but it's above the state of where he was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's like I would struggle to go as far as to say he cares, but I would say he doesn't like not care.
There's an improvement.
He's in like a middle indifferent but willing to try here and there phase. The match is pretty much nothing. Abyss jumps in the ring, causes a no contest. Post-match does rock, because it mostly just sets out a bunch of guys running out, lights out, Sabu runs wild, crowd go nuts for Sabu.
It's a good build to the Monsters Bowl.
You know what I've come to really appreciate?
Me?
Oh, I don't need to come to appreciate you. Oh no!
Why did you emphasize it that way?
I don't know.
Why did you put so much emphasis on the word come?
You trapped
I don't
me.
have to come to appreciate you.
That was entrapment. Sir, I protest. That was gonna be a nice sentiment that I always appreciated you, and then you trapped me into saying something filthy and dirty.
How did I do it?
It's setting up phrasing.
I didn't do anything.
You, sir, put the words in my mouth.
I'm crying.
I have come to appreciate.
Don't shudder while you say it now. I have
the Don West Sabu. Every time you get a lights out Sabu. He says it in the exact same way with like such the earnest Don West enthusiasm. He's like, Sabu!
He says it like how
he says it how a man should say Sabu at the end of a lights out Sabu.
Yeah. The fuck fuck are we doing?
All these men will be in Monsters Ball at Bound for Glory. Hardy, Sabu, Abyss, and Rhino. They do finally air footage of controversy in Canada. So the big angle, which I didn't actually talk about earlier, but the big swerve really is not just that Jarrett won the title, but America's Most Wanted helped him do it.
And thus becoming Canada.
They weren't actually let out of the country. They're trapped there.
Mm-hmm. These are their twin brothers.
AMW came out, death sentenced Raven, giving Jarrett the title. Scott D'Amore greets Jarrett backstage, and he's like, I love it when a plan comes together. So within story, they lured Raven into a title match in Scott D'Amore's home promotion so that evil Team Canada promoter D'Amore and new associates America's Most Wanted could conspire to screw Raven out of the NWA title, and Planet Jarrett can form in earnest.
So, like, as much as I dislike the title change, the thing that I actually hate more is that the turn of the biggest babyface tag team in company history happened on a show where you don't get to really see. And that's upsetting to me, especially when it's been a team that the crowd has kind of tried to turn heel a couple times, and they've teased it a couple times. The fact that we don't actually get that is kind of annoying.
And, like, it's almost kind of smart to do that in Canada.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's America's Most Wanted. They are very much an American tag team. So the idea of actually doing the heel turn in dastardly old Canada to add that extra little bit of heat would make sense if this Impact was in Canada and it wasn't a BCW show that you're just seeing highlights of.
Yeah.
Yeah. AMW gave into the Jarrett reasoning, gave into the paranoia. Which, to be fair, it's not paranoia. They did bring in Team 3D.
Yeah, Jarrett's right.
Jarrett was actually right. So yeah, Planet Jarrett has come together. So Jarrett and AMW come to the ring. AMW are in suits.
Because they're bad guys now.
They're mean. They're no longer salt of the earth. They no longer represent the common man in America.
It's upsetting. Now they represent the corporate greed in America.
So Jarrett gloats about being champion on Spike. He said he'd be champion, and then he was champion. He followed through with his promises. Takes all the credit for TNA. Thanks AMW as the cornerstones of TNA. And then introduces the final piece, Scott D'Amore. TNA then does connect the dots that D'Amore owns the promotion where the title change took place, thus putting a bow on the conspiracy. D'Amore says that Jarrett owes him one, which, based on TNA history, will not be repaid. Anytime anybody is owed one by Jeff Jarrett, it never goes anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. That works if these guys eventually catch on to his bullshit.
Yeah, it's part of the reason, like, Rhino turning him down was so good, because Rhino's like, I saw what you did with Monty. You did not return that favor.
But then, unfortunately, it just makes the first guy look like a dumb idiot. Garrett, we have breaking news.
What is it?
Revolution Pro. This is 8 hours ago. Fuck me. Don't worry about it. I'm shit. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going home.
Shibata?
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? I'm fucking gone.
I'm not going to that show, so it's fine. I'm flying in morning of, which is always risky, but hopefully it'll go fine. Because I flew in morning of for the last time New Japan were over here, and I ended up missing the first 2 matches on the show because my flight got delayed 3 hours. No fun at all. 3 Live Crew interrupt. They do their catchphrases. Conan accuses Jarrett of boring the people half to death. He's like, we've only been on Spike one night, and you've already bored these people to tears. Love Conan. He is the true one truth teller in TNA. They rush the ring, get overwhelmed before the debuting Team 3D, Brother Ray and Brother Devon. There was at one point, it seemed like he was going to be called B or D.
Wait, what?
As in, like, Bubba Ray Dudley, because there's the whole trademark issue we talked about on the last episode where they can't use the names the Dudleys. So they settled on Team 3D. There was going around, like, the Deadly Brothers at one stage, but they did settle on Team 3D, and Brother Devon was decided on. And then, apparently, they thought about B or D for a while.
That's shite.
Bird.
Brrr.
Thankfully, they settled on Brother Ray, which
I
at least maybe
I remember the Deadly Brothers thing. That floating around for a while there.
before they settled on this.
Brother Ray dead. They mixed both together.
I think that's what they were thinking about for a while, right? That might be what the B or D was, rather than Bubba Ray Dudley. Brother Ray Deadly.
Maybe they weren't sure they were going to be able to get Dudley at all.
Oh yeah, well they knew Dudley was out. Like that was underlined.
Yeah.
And then they realized, I think, WWE didn't have 3D, so they're like, that's the thing people know us by, so let's work around that.
Honestly, I think as far as, like, having to rebrand the Dudleys, it's about as good as you can get.
Yeah, like, it works. And I'm like, fair enough, we lived with it for, like, 18 years now, so...
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, we're not in the moment anymore, so it's kind of broken into our brains that Team 3D is a fine thing to hear.
I'm telling you right now, I never call him Bubba.
Bully?
He's either Bully or, like, I used to call him Brother Ray.
I think people largely did call him Bubba up until he was Bully, and then Bully kind of worked.
Yeah, he's Bully now.
Like, before, like, because Taz would still call him Bubba on commentary when he was in TNA. It's like, oh, it's Bubba. Whereas I think people did slip into bully because that's, again, an easier thing to say than Brother Ray.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants to call him Ray.
Or brother.
No, unless he's Hulk Hogan.
Listen here, brother, and Devon and Ray both look at him and go, what? Who, me, him?
Oh, during the Aces and Eights stuff where Bully was marrying Brooke, every time he was like, what you gonna do, brother? He should have stopped him like, it's Bully now.
Dad.
They hit the 3D on Storm. They hit the 3D on Harris. Crowd are going nuts. They stare at Jeff Jarrett. Mike today is like, get him! Get him!
Kill him! End his life on Spike TV!
I love babyface announcers like that. That aren't just like, well, I call it down the middle. Like, actively root for the death of the heels.
Like Giovanni with MJF.
And like JR did it all the time as well, where it's just like, yes, like the famous like Stone Cold thing. But he wanted Stone Cold to kill everybody. Jarrett did escape. He backed up the ramp when Kevin Nash's fake Dr. Dre music hit, and he's here.
Cool. Big Sexy!
He walks down the ramp, Jarrett backs up into the ring, gets jackknife powerbombed before Nash makes the challenge for Bound for Glory, which had my absolute favorite line, maybe in the history of TNA, where Nash says, looks like Planet Jarrett is a little off axis tonight, which I think that's the first mention of Planet Jarrett proper as like a group.
Yeah.
Though I suppose it's the catchphrase, welcome to Planet Jarrett, but still.
Yeah, you don't know if he's referring to them as the group, or if he's just referring to the catchphrase.
But Don West replies, in the most earnest voice I've ever heard in my life, thanks to you, big guy.
I choose to believe that the implication is that Big Sexy is so huge that he is simply thrown off the axis of Planet Jarrett.
Just by being in its proximity?
Yeah. Like Big Sexy has his own gravitational force that's colliding with Planet Jarrett.
And like, you throw a planet off its axis, that's
It's
gonna
fucked.
fuck shit up.
Yeah, it's done.
All your climate, different. Waves, different. Day and night, different. You even slightly. Like, it might be the case that like, oh, it's still sustainable for life, but everything we know is different.
It should happen.
just to change things up, just for a bit of fun.
Yeah, why not? It's time that we get a rebrand.
Mike Tenay then throws the hear from Brother Ray, and we cut to a Devon promo, which is, we'll talk about how this was cut down in a second. And then Devon challenges AMW to a tag team dream match next week as we go off the air with the tease of two of the, what they crown wrestling's best tag teams facing off, even though, hey, you remember those guys? They're called the Naturals. They're the NWA World Tag Team Champions.
Should have put them in the match, and then we have obvious losers.
I love that next week where like the best teams in the world face tonight in your main event. It's like, guys, the Naturals have the tag titles. Remember the Naturals?
And also, like when like Devon and Bubba are cutting the promo, and they're like, "Yeah, this is about winning the tag team titles," and you're like, "No, that's the Naturals.
Andy, Chase,
They're the tag champs."
Before Team 3D and Nash went to the ring, they were told that there was less than a minute and a half left total TV time for their run-ins and promos. All three had comments edited from TV because of tight TV time. Conan's promo was also cut down. He had more anti-Jeff Jarrett sentiment, apparently. Again, the one truth teller. And Team 3D's Brother Ray gave Vince McMahon the finger at the tapings, and he said, copyright this. But that was edited off the broadcast too.
I love this segment. So chaotic.
Yeah, it's one of those, again, where like chopping it down to its like real base elements is created that kind of sense of energy where it's like you get the 3Ds and the crowd are going nuts, and you get the powerbomb and Jarrett, and you get the challenge for Bound for Glory, and you get the challenge for Impact next week, and all of that happens in the space of like 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
They're going crazy with it.
Like, there are times where you want an angle to breathe, you want to sit with something, you don't want to rush through a million things at once, but sometimes it works. Sometimes it is your 60-minute adrenaline rush. Nash was originally meant to return at Unbreakable, do a cameo to begin the build of Bound for Glory, but that spot was meant to be him and Waltman doing an interview together, as like they're in the background talking to each other, and there's something like that, and then the mystery is like, what are they doing? What's Nash doing here? What's happening here?
Is the band back together?
Ooh, not for another 6 years. 5 years? 5 years. And yeah, when Waltman no-showed, they scrapped that, so Nash just schmoozed with some Spike executives and left.
It sounds like a great payday.
I always think about that sometimes. When you look at like what a person did on TV.
Yeah, Lex Lovett on this show.
But like, he had a match.
Yeah, 2 bumps and he's out, brother.
That's true, but he didn't get paid very much.
True.
He's also local, so he didn't get flown in. But sometimes you see someone have like a 60-second pre-tape to set up a segment the next week, and I'm like, you really fly all the way to like Sioux City, Iowa to film that one pre-tape, sit around in catering, and go home? Not sure how I'd feel about that. I was like, could you not have got me to film that last week and left me at home?
Let's keep an eye out of funny scenarios for guys to get flown in for.
Yeah. But to wrap things up, that is the first Impact on Spike TV. I think, as I said, as an introduction to TNA, as a piece that tells you who AJ is, who Monty is, who Jared are, who AMW are, to give you a hook with Team 3D, a star-driven main event even without a finish, and a cool X Division match in the middle. I'm like, that's a pretty darn good use of your first 42 minutes on Spike TV.
What do you think, relative to its level, was the more successful debut episode of television? The first Impact or this?
This had more... Actually, no, the first Impact had a ton of energy too.
Yes.
The first Impact had a title change.
Do you want me to remind you what was on the first?
I know most of what was on the first Impact. Both probably had Monty squashes.
No, it was an Abyss squash.
Oh, they went for the Abyss squash. Duh. Save that for the second episode this time. But like the first, yeah, it had the 6-man opener, which rocked. The Team Canada against Sanjay, Hector Garza, and... No, it's 6-man.
That was a 6. I'm just trying to fuck with you now.
Don't you test me. It's Garza, Sanjay, and Red. 6-man tag against Team Canada. Bobby Roode, Petey Williams, Eric Young.
There you go. What was the Abyss match?
Oh, it's probably Bucker Lex, isn't it?
Shark Boy.
Oh, it is Shark Boy, yeah, because he goes on the little run around the theme park with Popeye. You get AMW against Kid Cash and Dallas, where AMW win the tag titles. Then you get the Styles return to the X Division main event, where he becomes #1 contender in the multi-man. And what else is on that show? Is there anything else? I do think, like, one, this show looks better, which we didn't touch on. There is improvements to the lighting and the impact zone. It looks better. There's more color, except on one camera shot where they didn't color balance it properly. But
yes, which is weird. It was so like distracting.
It does on the whole look better, look brighter, look like a bigger presentation. The crowd are probably a little bit hotter, and because you do have like Nash and Team 3D, you have a better level of star on this show than you had on that one. So I think on the whole, this is probably the better episode of TV.
But we did give 2 matches on that first show, quarter star higher than the 2. You know, keep that in consideration.
It is something we talk like. They do reset shows well.
Yeah, this company has always done a good reset.
And that's always been the thing in, I think, every company. It's like, there's been 1,000 great reset shows that then never really go anywhere.
Because it's really easy to book the first pro wrestling show that you do. It's the easiest thing in the world to book a debut pro wrestling show.
Yeah, you have a million ideas, you have a bunch of stuff to do, you feel really
You have every bit of resource in the world, just like a complete fresh list of guys with nothing that's hampering them.
Whereas when you're stuck on like the third TV on a pay-per-view cycle, then like, how the fuck are we getting to this Jay Lethal versus Jay Briscoe Ring of Honor World title match? To maybe perhaps use a recent TEW example between the two of us. When you're there and you're just like, I don't know, when you don't even care about the match you booked, which will always happen sometimes, you'll just be like, just do a match I don't care about this month just to get us through the cycle. And yeah, because I'm forgiving for stuff like that once the broad energy is good. Like, you do have to phone it in sometimes. Sometimes your go-home show does just have to be 3 pay-per-view matches smushed together into a 6-man tag. Sometimes that's okay. Usually because the 6-man tag will probably end up being pretty good.
We're doing a post-main event, and we're closing out on chaos.
Everybody runs out, one after another, and there you go. You see you on Sunday. Go to the pay-per-view. Again, that's fine. But yeah, it is very easy to book the like fresh-faced, enthusiastic reboot show where you might do a title change or get a couple debuts in. Everyone's real pumped up and excited. And when you're 4 months down the line, just doing another pay-per-view cycle, trying to keep the same enthusiasm is quite difficult.
I think look at us with our well-reasoned, interesting explanation.
Yeah, I think both from the perspective of bookers and wrestlers.
Oh yeah, but I'm sure the grind as a wrestler is fucking like atrociously annoying.
Like, I am sure everybody on this show was so up for it.
Yeah.
It's like,
everyone
was willing to kill themselves on guardrail.
Yeah, and how like the pace in which people work, you know, for at least 7 of the people on this show.
Especially Lex Lovett.
My point. For at least like 7 people on the show, this is like your mainstream television debut. You're feeling fucking amped.
And then, again, 4 months down the line when you're having your 10th match on Spike.
And you've had to deal with TNA backstage bullshit. You get broken down real easy.
Yeah, even the best, most enthusiastic wrestlers are like, house show effort tonight, lads, right?
At some point, it becomes work again.
There's always the difficult thing to remove between, like, I'm not a meaningful artist, but like even podcasts are like, it's work this time, isn't it?
Brother, it's work today, let me tell you.
This is where you make a quip that, like, it's work with you every time, brother, carrying you because my back is sore.
Nah, I'd never say that. Just thinking.
But yeah, it is a job. Sometimes, as I said, sometimes you're just going to work, you have a bad week, you just have to get in, get out, do your 90-second pre-tape in Iowa and go home.
It is something that I think a lot of wrestling fans forget. because like it's such a meaningful like way of being entertained to us that like the idea that for some people this is just them clocking in and clocking out is like can be lost very easy because it's such a weird personable mix of reality and performance sort of industry, which is its own unique thing that there's nothing else quite like.
And it's just like the relationship we have with art is is very different from the relationship the artist might have with art. It's like we watch a TV show expecting it to be like the most thoughtful, put together, brilliant thing that everyone's put every ounce of it, everything they have into. That's kind of what everybody expects every time you watch a show or you watch a movie or you watch a wrestling match. And sometimes it is just like, oh, we have a script deadline, let's get whatever we can over the line. And sometimes it is like, oh, we shot that scene, it took fucking 17 hours, we had a long shoot day and no one gave a shit at the end and we just finished that shit. Like, everything is like that sometime.
And then sometimes you're lucky enough that you're like, this is the thing that I need to fill TV time, but these two guys both care and they make something out of it. And then sometimes it's the opposite, where you like something you really care about that you're booking, and then like these people might not necessarily be into it or have their own personal things going on, and they're like, they don't deliver it to the level that you thought it was going to be at.
There's just a lot of variables is what we're saying.
Well, because, like, more than anything else, like, wrestling is dealing on the whims of 1,000 different performers at once. And they're doing live performance weekly. And the audience, of course, yeah.
That's the first episode on Spike. Good episode.
We've done 2 topics.
So, ratings talk, Liam. TNA debuted on October 1st in the Velocity time slot with a 7.8 rating and 850,000 viewers. Median age was 51, slightly younger than Velocity's 41, and strongest
43.
with males...
35. Wow! Why did none of us say the right number then?
What's going on with you?
You said the median age was 51, alright?
Okay.
And I went to correct you, and I said 43 while directly staring at 35.
Are we both having strokes?
I legitimately think that might have been a stroke moment, because I was looking at 35 and still said 43.
Is it like contagious? You know when someone pukes and then it's like a chained reaction where someone else pukes? Are we having that but strokes?
I think so, because that was weird. I didn't like that my brain told me one thing and my mouth said another.
Happens to me all the time, to be fair. The median age was 35, which is slightly younger than Velocity, where the median age was 41.
Now, are the TNA fans more educated and have more money than the WWE fans?
I love that survey so much.
It's
It makes people so angry.
I'm surprised people get angry at that, because like the WWE fans can't afford phone or to know how to read.
You really want to double down on that?
Yeah, fuck them. I hate them. go. They watch the wrestling equivalent of Saturday morning cartoons. You see, Roman's the bad guy because he cheated.
No, they like Roman. They think he's great. That's the problem.
Oh, sorry, they don't even understand the thing they're watching.
Yeah, because Michael Cole's like he's the greatest champion, even though he cheats with ref bumps and run-ins in literally every single one of his goddamn matches. But they still present him as if he's like this revolutionary figure.
I actually think they've changed it now, and now like they've turned against him as a big loser who's been cheating the whole time.
Yeah, they've finally been like, he has cheated in literally every single one of his title matches in the exact same way.
Yeah, they started to change the narrative now.
TNA was strongest with males 25 to 34 with a .88, the same demo as UFC. TNA was no doubt helped by having a lead-in as the repeat strongest episode of the season of Ultimate Fighter, but the good news is that they retained viewership, and the angle at the end drove up viewership by about 23%. That figure may be slightly off, but not by much, says Dave, from the other 3 quarters, which is a stark contrast to Velocity, which generally lost audience as each quarter went on. So a good first number. Obviously 850,000 is about 3 to 4 times more people than were watching on FSN, which is a substantial upgrade, but it's also about 300,000 more people than were watching Velocity in the same time slot, and that audience is bigger and younger.
This is a dynamite numbers right here. Crazier demo.
Yeah, back in the good old days when young people watch TV, eh?
Yeah, but like same total as like a dynamite, it'd crush a collision rate. Jarrett over Punk makes you think.
This is the reason that should be the all-out match, or all-in.
Which one? I know which one you'd rather see.
Listen, I want my world in Wembley. That's all I want out of that show. If I get that mashup, I'm going to be so angry. Even if it requires a Grado match against Jarrett, which I'm kind of into because Grado's cool.
They should just do a 0 hour like rump. so that everyone can get their music hit and everyone can go, woo.
The last time Velocity did a rating as good as TNA did was April 2004, so over 18 months back in the past. The replay of the show on Monday night at midnight did a 0.5, which is considered a disappointment because it's a 62% from what Ultimate Fighter had been doing. But they also didn't advertise it at all. They put all their eggs in the main Saturday era.
That's a good number.
So probably the better news.
This is crazy to me. That Dave downplays it and says pretty good news. This is crazy.
Because it is substantial conventional wisdom these days that you'll do a great number for show number 1, but
and
you'll
then
never
you'll
get back to it.
Plummet.
And TNA didn't. TNA did a better number for show number 2.
Increased week over week. That's insane.
A pretty small demo boost, but from a 0.78 to a 0.82, and then from 850,000 viewers to 994 for week 2.
That's wild.
Which does feed into what we were saying in that they gave people a good reason to come back, and they came back in bigger numbers than they were the week before.
Yeah, people there's probably a lot of, this happened on the show, you need to watch it, boop, bop, beep.
Week 3, a 0.81, so more or less flat with the week before, and then 841,000, which is decently down. It was their lowest yet. But then week 4, Bound for Glory Go Home, 1.28 million viewers and a 0.9 rating on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock. Their 4th week, they did a substantially better number than their Spike TV did.
What the fuck is that rating? Tony Khan would kill a man. Would literally kill a man on his television show if he was guaranteed that.
Yeah. The show did a 1.5 among males 25 to 34. That's an audience of 52% week on week. From the debut, that's 400,000 viewers more.
Wow.
So that
Jesus.
is out of the gate a runaway success.
Yeah. It's so funny that in a 2023 TV environment, how much money this would make for Pac.
Yeah, if they could pull those kind of demo numbers, if they could do a 0.1 or 1.5 in males 25 to 34, they would be probably the biggest wrestling company in the world.
Yeah. That's wild to think. And really interesting that many people can watch the product and then live events not being crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just they could not turn them into customers. And for good reason in the Russo era. And they're a little better at doing it in this era, but they just couldn't turn that into dollars and cents in the same way others could.
How could you have 1.28 million people watching your show and your pay-per-view's not doing crazy numbers and you couldn't sell out bigger arenas?
That's the thing. The arenas thing is always the bit that fascinates me. How long it takes them to get out of Orlando.
Do you think if they left now, even just for pay-per-views, they could be doing 5,000 to 10,000 seaters?
Their first show they run is Bound for Glory 06. So we're a year away from doing their first proper pay-per-view on the road. They test the waters with some house shows in 2006, actual house shows. They've been doing some house shows with Hermie Sadler's company, but that does I think 3 to 4. There's good reason they couldn't turn these viewers into customers because they didn't offer anything worth paying for and actively spurned them multiple times. They punished them for anytime people paid money for TNA long term, especially in the Russo eras to come. They were punished and made paid for it. But yeah, it's one of those things where you look at this audience, again, this is in a Saturday night 11 p.m. time slot, and they're doing 1.28 million viewers, growing the audience more or less, bar the drop for week 3, but bounce back substantially for week 4. They basically grew substantially from week 1 to week 4. A runaway success, huge, immediately establishes TNA as a pretty credible number 2 with a decent sized audience if you go there. As I said, if you're Samoa Joe on TV now, you're being seen by multitudes more people than you've ever been seen by before. And there's a great incentive to go to TNA, especially booking's pretty good these days, bar some Jeff Jarrett incited problems. But it's amazing how the fate of this company flipped so dramatically from where they were in May, June, where they were still buying time on Fox Sports. The pay-per-views were doing okay, but obviously not enough to sustain the entire company. And then here they are on Spike TV doing runaway success numbers, nearly doubling Velocity in the same time slot. And it goes from strength to strength for a decent while.
Yeah, then they fuck it all up.
They do fuck it all up.
The TNA story.
Yeah, it's literally ... and they fuck it all up.
That's the rise and fall of ECW-esque book, the ... and then they fuck it up, the TNA story.
Yeah, huge rating success. And again, running against, because a lot of trends these days, which didn't used to be the trends, but it's just the way TV works now, in that you will start extremely high, and then, like, Dynamite has never been watched by more people than the first episode of Dynamite. I think the same is true of, actually, the same isn't probably true of Rampage, it's probably true of the second episode of Rampage. Collision has yet to get back to the first Collision number, even though it's improved in recent weeks. Like, it's just conventional wisdom now. You'll do your best number week 1, and you won't grow. You'll find a steady state and stay there and fluctuate up and down, but you won't grow. Whereas this show grew immediately. And like the other one is, like, these days, if you watch a pro wrestling television show, the quarter hours will decline quarter on quarter for the show. That's just the way. If you look at Dynamite quarters, if you look at Raw quarters, maybe not SmackDown quarters, because Roman Reigns is a gigantic TV draw at the moment. So if he's put in the last segment, that segment will go way up.
But he never is, to be fair. He's always in the first, and then they do, like, the tangential bloodline guys in the final.
But if you look at the Raw quarters and the Dynamite quarters, and even, like, Collision, they always just, they trend downward for the entire show. And, like, conventional wisdom is like, why are you driving away your viewership over the entire course of a broadcast? What's happening there? But that's just the way it is now. As opposed to back in these days, you would be like, why did you start with a higher number than you finished? What's wrong with the show?
TV was still king.
Yeah, and there was less demands on people's time. It's always my thing when people are like, oh, attention spans are way down. It's like, nope, attention spans are the same. The amount of demands on people's attention spans has dramatically increased.
Yeah, I think, like, now there's also just a point where people get to a certain part in the night where they're like, I'm done engaging in whatever I'm engaging in. I'm going to go chuck something on demand or watch the show I've been watching. Like, there's a switch off point for a lot of people, I feel now.
Just, like, detach from the various demands on their attention spans and escape into nothing.
Into the thing that they have already designated time to before.
Yeah, it's the comfort.
Also, to back up that theory, that's why, like, the DVR numbers are crazy for wrestling. It's like that for, like, those Collision shows, like, they always hit over 1 million total once you account the DVR guys.
We all just like to fall back on the things we enjoy, and sometimes get trapped in the things we enjoy and need to break out of that, because it can be a little unhealthy to always fall back on your little comforts and not challenge yourself.
Oh no.
Intervention.
I didn't realize this is what this was.
But I do find myself doing that. Anytime I'm going to rewatch The West Wing or Parks and Rec or Frasier or any of the shows that I know will just be comfort food to me. There is part of me is like, what am I trying to escape right now? And sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I need to escape right now. But other times I'm like, no, I should watch something new. I should actually actively try to challenge myself a little bit.
No.
Because of the war, this being the war between WWE and Spike, Spike has made a major commitment to TNA. The Spike production crew will be filming the TNA tapings, which saves the company on production costs. This means, on occasion, when the Spike crew has committed to other events such as award shows, that tapings in Orlando's may occasionally be moved to Mondays a few times per year. In addition, they are scheduling a 6-hour Ultimate Fighter marathon, including the best episode of the season with the best fight in the history of the show, which is George Gurgle against Jason Von Flew.
That's not real.
Those aren't real people. Basically, they're doing a marathon that has, like, cutaways to TNA personalities promoting the product, and they're really getting behind TNA.
So at this point, have Spike already taken over filming TNA?
I think from first taping, yeah. So you're like, Spike, white balance your cameras, boys.
Yeah, that's basically what I was thinking. I was like, come on, you guys are a professional operation.
Spike TV officials at the UFC event Monday night. This is after the first taping aired. Sorry, this is like the Monday after the first show aired. We're raving about the product and how it delivered. And we're predicting a 1.0 rating. So they actually slightly fell below their enthusiastic predictions. But they're talking about TNA doing a Monday night special when Raw was preempted for the Westminster Dog Show in February.
What the fuck? Why does the Westminster Dog Show kill WWE?
I've never understood it. I assume it's some kind of institution on USA or in America. It doesn't exist anymore. But it was always my favorite thing reading, like, the Death of WCW book. Where they'd just be like, and the Westminster Dog Show preempted Raw this week, so Nitro did a monster rating.
Yeah, I don't get it.
In a major sign of confidence by Spike TV and TNA, after 3 weeks of solid ratings, Spike TV will be giving TNA a primetime special on November 3rd. That's on a Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The 2-hour broadcast was taped on the taping right after Bound for Glory. So Spike is already, like, testing the waters with giving them, like, a better time slot on a better day.
I mean, they see this as a runaway success for what they paid for it, clearly.
Like, Spike are like, all in.
Yeah, we're paying like a fifth of what we paid to WWE, and we're doing like good numbers in a bad spot. Like, let's just see how far we can go with it.
Yeah, because I'd imagine they were like, because they wanted to get out of wrestling at first. Then they had a bunch of petty nonsense with WWE that probably opened the door a little bit for TNA, where they're like, out of spite, let's try this. And it's going to cost us very little to nothing, because I believe like the production costs they're covering, so it's not costing them very much at all. And then they're like, yeah, how much can we get out of this? How much of a WWE replacement could this potentially be for us?
They also probably see it as them getting in on the ground floor of something that could grow, their own institution.
One of the reasons they did the special Thursday night episode is because the regular Saturday night episode would have been preempted for a UFC card. So they're like, instead of moving it to 1 a.m., or let's just put them in primetime on Thursday and see how it goes.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving it about and testing new out at this point.
Yeah, and a kind of like, I don't know, ominous sign. Spike TV wants more recognizable names to appear on TNA programming, especially wrestlers from later WCW era who didn't jump ship to WWE when WCW was bought out. I wonder who they could be talking about there.
Sting is my guess.
Spike wants Sting, Liam. The members of management who were aware of the direction TNA needs to take in order to be a true alternative with solid wrestling and compelling characters are rolling their eyes at Spike's latest trigger-happy attempt to push TNA into a more sports entertainment niche because they only know wrestling through a WWE mindset. I broadly agree with that sentiment.
Which one?
The idea that Spike are like trigger-happy pushing TNA out of being something that is their own towards something more like WWE with stars from yesteryear.
Yeah, I agree. But I also don't think you should immediately dismiss using people who are talented or over.
My bigger issue is nobody in TNA wrestling can be like, how dare they suggest such a thing?
Oh, yeah, because they've been doing it from day one.
Nobody in this company can be like, how dare you sully the purity of our vision?
Yeah.
With your suggestions of Sting. We would never book Sting.
Ignore for when we booked Sting.
Delete the tape from 2003. Doug Herzog, who runs Spike, sent an internal memo to the company executives that touted Impact's ratings and its potential and used the phrase, "Who misses WWE now?"
Wow, that's very TNT of them. Very Warner Brothers.
It's also been noted, and this has been directly credited to the UFC more than TNA, that the network was up in both men 18 to 49 and overall 18-49 during the week of October 3rd to October 9th. So the first week without WWE, they were actually up in the demo in men and overall.
Eat shit, WWF.
There's a bunch of reviews here that I pulled from PW Torch just because I thought it was interesting to like get the broader perspective of like how did people feel in the moment about that first debut episode. Like one person gives it a 6.5. The best match is AJ and Roddy. The worst match is Monty. Lex Lovett. You should have put Rhino and Jeff Hardy there, buddy. That squash rocked.
I guess he may not have seen stars.
Like somebody gave it a 10 just because it's like, oh, it's so great to have a wrestling alternative, which is both corny and a little bit true. But it seems people like broadly enjoyed the show at the time. According to TNA President Dixie Carter, the thought of shutting down TNA amidst the monetary losses and unfavorable television deals never crossed her mind.
There has never been a day I felt that, Carter told Between the Ropes Radio. People have been saying we don't have a chance. You lose money when you start a new company. We have had a wonderful business plan in place that we have met or exceeded along the way. Carter confirms reports that Spike TV planned to get out of the wrestling business after working with WWE before taking interest in the TNA product. From the first meeting, they were intrigued by the uniqueness of our product, how innovative it was, how different it was from what they currently had on the air, apparently not. Carter said, they've been believers from the beginning. They're as excited about us being on Spike as we are. Carter views TNA as competition to WWE with an opportunity to bring back the 10 million viewers who stopped watching wrestling over the last 5 years. I hope they grow 2 million fans, and I hope we find the other 8, Carter said. That's what it's all about. Getting back in there and reconnecting with people who maybe got disenchanted with where wrestling was going.
A couple of questions. Let's start at the start. How much do you think she believes that first part?
No, 0. I think there's definitely been a day where she thought about it.
It's like, can we just cut bait on this shit? Or maybe not she thought about it, but certainly her father did. Yes. The second part is one of my least favorite wrestling talking points.
Getting back the 10 million viewers.
Even just like the sentiment of getting back old fans. It's like, it would be nice to do, but you should be more concerned about creating new ones.
Yeah.
Like the hot period in wrestling in the 80s and the hot period of wrestling in the 90s did not happen because they brought back fans from old eras. They happened because they created new fans with a fresh product that appealed to them.
But Garrett, what you're forgetting is that is very hard.
But the other part is harder. That's my thing.
But they think it's easier because they think it's as easy as, let's bring in blank, or let's reunite blank and blank.
It just drives me nuts. It drives me crazy that they're always looking back at the old fans instead of being like, every wrestling boom ever. If you study wrestling history, you will see it was by creating new fans. All of them was by creating new fans, not getting the old ones back. You already have the old ones who are sticking around.
It's not an easy thing to do, but wrestling's pretty simple in that if you want to make fans, you gotta make stars. That's really the easiest. That's it's not the easiest thing, but that is the formula. And for some reason, I think people just ignore that's the formula. It's just, you just gotta have people who are over and you will generate fans.
And usually the people that are over are not the people that were over 10 years ago. And the best example is Hulk Hogan. Like, Hulk Hogan from 1984 could not get over the same way Hulk Hogan tried to in 1994, which is the reason the only way Hulk Hogan could get over in the 90s, at least to the extent that he was in the 80s, was by becoming something completely different. That's why you needed the NWO Hulk Hogan, because the red and yellow say your prayers, eat your vitamins Hogan was cliched and played out by the 90s. You needed something new, even like with the biggest star in the history of the business. He could not just coast on cupping his ear and doing his python poses. He needed something more in the 90s because everyone got sick of him and times had moved on. Like, the star is always a star of the time. John Cena was a star of the time. Steve Austin was the star of the time. Like, you cannot just, like, the Bullet Club was a great example. Those were guys who appealed to a certain generation of fans between the ages of 18 and 35. Like, there was a whole new audience. We talked about this on one of our, or I think Rain Takers, when we were talking about the influence of that era of the Bullet Club, when I went to that OTT show that the Elite were on, and you're like, oh, those are new wrestling fans. Those are people who didn't go to shows a lot 5 years ago, who have been drawn in by these new guys. And that's the way it works. Stop pandering to the old fans. They don't come back. They never come back.
And if they do, they come back they'll watch the clip on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're not tuning in the next week. They're not buying the t-shirt. They're not flying out to the big show.
The guy they liked when they were young will do something cool, and as you said, they'll watch the clip.
If they even watch the clip.
If they even watch the clip. They probably won't even do that.
They'll get sent the clip by a friend who still watches wrestling, and they will see that they sent that, and then that'll be the end of the interaction.
And they'll probably say something to the extent of, wrestling is shit now, it was better when I was younger.
And to be fair, they'll be wrong.
And yet they won't think it any less strongly. So, on the Spike TV Vince McMahon stuff, Vince McMahon came out to open the September 26th Raw, the last Raw on Spike, not realizing he was going head-to-head with the most well-known accepted mainstream star he ever created, The Rock, who was cutting his own brand of introductions on Monday Night Football. McMahon talked about how this was the final episode of Raw on Spike. He noted that 5 years ago, Raw came from USA to the National Network, which then became the National Network, which then became Spike TV, and said over the 5 years, both sides have grown. He thanked Spike for the partnership, and then said next week they were coming home to USA Network. Spike then pulled the sound so that he couldn't say the words USA Network.
That's awesome.
It was well known that Spike had told WWE that they could plug the October 3rd show all they wanted.
But then they said, psych!
Well, like, they were adamant that they couldn't say USA. They're like, they could say next week on Raw, they could say what was on it, and they could even say this was the last show on Spike, but they couldn't say, like, USA Network. Which, to me, sounds pretty reasonable.
I don't know. I think it's petty, but I'm for it, though.
But, like, they're directly competing with you starting next Monday. I'm perfectly fine with them being like, no, you cannot say where you're airing next week, because
all right, Garrett,
that competes with us.
You own a restaurant.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And on the last day of your chef, your main chef working in your restaurant, he's going around to the table and saying, just so you know, next week I'll be starting at this restaurant.
I would kick the dude the fuck out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea that Spike are the petty ones for being like pretty reasonable for them, like being you can plug it, you can say this is the last show on Spike. People can work out where the fuck you're going from there, but you can't say it on air. And then they still went out there and said it. And Spike are the petty ones for cutting the sound? Nah, fuck off.
You know what? That being said, I do think what Vince did was petty, but again, I don't give a shit. I think it's funny. So.
Oh, like I don't blame Vince for doing it because he's Vince fucking McMahon.
What are they gonna do? I'm gone next week.
They should have like literally put up bars and tone for the 2 hours.
They should have started playing TNA over.
They should have. They literally should have just cut to like they're like, hey, send us Unbreakable. We're gonna put that on the air. Sound good?
That would have been so good if like they think they're running Raw, but they just play 2 hours of Unbreakable on TV.
Tell Vince to get fucked because you didn't agree to the terms.
Would they legally be allowed to do that?
They'd probably be able to sue, but only for like the cost of the last like 3 days of the contract.
Like if they feign some technical problem where they're like, we can't stream anything live, we have to put on something taped.
Oh yeah, if they bullshit it, they might be able to, but like it would be.
And they're like, oh, don't worry, we'll put Raw on at like midnight.
Like it would be breach of contract, but like only for the amount WWE paid for that one TV show.
I would do it. It would honestly might be worth it. With how many people is Raw doing in 2005?
Like 4 million, I think.
Exposing 4 million people to the product that you're about to run,
which they were doing during the breaks. To be fair, they were doing TNA ads during the breaks.
I might just do it.
You'd be like, well, yeah, I'd be like, keep that in your pocket for if Vince mentions USA.
Yeah, and then do an immediate switch over. Like, have it on a second feed ready to go with, like, AJ and Joe or some shit.
They put up technical difficulty video edits when they attempted to show posters about the move to USA. Then a few minutes later, Jonathan Coachman, who obviously is the voice of Vince in the headsets during Raw, went into a tirade about censorship that was also sound edited. They censored the rant about censorship.
Fucking, I take it all back. It owns, actually.
Before he told fans to go to WWE.com to hear Vince McMahon's unedited promo.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have another point.
Mm-hmm.
If this can't be classified as breach of contract, like fucking with the live show, you can just show the fucking Unbreakable 3-way. It would be even funnier if they put Raw like in the lower third, like it was a reaction video.
Yeah.
And then just play the Unbreakable 2005 match just over it.
It's like, pal, we aired Raw. Look at it, it's right there in the corner of the screen.
You never specified how big the Raw tape had to be.
They were then remembered a strategy that WCW wrestlers used to use on TNT when they wanted to swear, where they would basically swear multiple times in a row. One would get bleeped, and then you'd get the swear through on the back end of the bleep. Mm-hmm. So they're like, USA Network, USA Network, USA Network, to try and get it past the censors.
I thought they were going to start going like, fuck.
Eventually they reach a ceasefire after like an hour and a half where they're like, fine, you can mention fucking USA. Come on.
That would have been so funny. They really should have fucked with them more and just put TNA on the screen. If you want to get around it, like in those ad break sections, just start playing full matches.
Just Monty squashes for the entire ad.
Yeah.
I think your advertisers might have an issue with that, but I think it's a
good
idea.
Put them in the place of where you're going to put the TNA ads anyway.
You can get a Monty squash in there. They're only 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Once the relationship ended with that Raw, they then removed all mention of WWE from the website, put a plug to Impact on the front page, and then the plug stated, Sprite brings you the new wrestling alternative. TNA Impact delivers a distinct brand of high-risk live athletic entertainment. TNA's roster includes some of the most exciting and recognizable stars in wrestling today, such as Jeff Jarrett, Raven, Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, Abyss, Shawn Waltman, Christopher Daniels, Monty Brown, and others, plus the X Division 6-sided ring, Ultimate X King of the Mountain, 6 sides of steel. So that is like the end of our pretty endless slate of news about Spike. We're not even done the news. That's just the end of the Spike news.